Then, the heavens opened up without warning, and beyond this flimsy wooden sanctuary, a tide of the undead had already gathered. A lone man frantically pounds on the door, pleading for entry. Screaming his name is Jong Hong, begging them to just grant him entry. Within, the survivors are cowering, paralyzed by the terrifying shrieks. The bitter truth is, his friends are barricading him out, and one of them asks, "What are we even to do?" Just then, a blonde girl cries out for them to save him. She declares Jong Hoon is her beloved, and they cannot abandon him to that fate. So they must unseal the entrance this instant. But another boy retorts that her plan is madness, because he's surely been tainted by the horde already. The blonde girl snaps back that it changes nothing. She's their class representative and won't forsake a single soul. Therefore, she will bear the burden for whatever unfolds. She keeps insisting that stranding him outside, screaming in despair, is no different than committing murder. That single line, it strikes a chord with one of them. He looks to the man at his side, a boy called Yi Bai, declaring he'll open the door. He tells Yi Bai to slam it closed the instant he's inside. Before Yi Bai can even utter a word, the young man begins a final countdown. Tension grips them all. On 3, he turns the handle, but in that moment, their friend was already a twisted monster. Yi Bai is shoved violently through the frame. Everyone inside is frozen in pure horror, and our protagonist, Yi Bai, screams, warning them he's already been turned, that this was a catastrophic mistake. The blonde girl attempts to flee, shoving others aside as they all cry out for rescue. Poor Yi Bai raises a hand to block a bite, of course. His arm is now a shield and the teeth sink in. The agony is simply blinding. But in that instant, something impossible occurred. Yi Bai relives memories from the day his arm was lost. The monsters breached the walls, all thanks to that blonde girl, and everyone scrambled to survive. Shortly after, they learn the city had been utterly consumed by the apocalypse. A cloaked man questions if he is certain of his choice. The doctor observes him, and he knew there were only 2 paths left to him. He grasped the door's handle, first to ensure his own survival, and second to enact his revenge. And now, he has returned to the present, to the exact moment before the door was unbarred. After surviving a lifetime in this hellscape, missing a limb, he was back at the very beginning. Outside, Jong Hung hammers on the door, pleading to be let in, and the blonde girl once more demands that they open it, proclaiming her status as representative who would never abandon her friends. Yi Bai knows her as Li Ruoxi and thinks, why does she appear so youthful now? She shouts, asking if they're deaf, telling them to let Jong Hun in, because failing to do so makes them murderers. Yi Bai smirks to himself. His entire scheme has fallen into place. He returned to rewrite this world. He calls out to the class representative. He cautions her that Jong Hun, the man outside, could already be infected. So how will she possibly handle the consequences? She claims since no one witnessed him get bitten, there is no way to be absolutely sure. And as their rep, she will accept full responsibility. Yi Bai just smiles and says, very well. He grabs her hand, telling her if that's truly the case, she can unlatch the door on her own. Li Ruoxi is completely speechless. The other girls are shocked he would dare tell her to act. The blonde girl shrieks at him, calling him less than a man for making a woman do it. But he states that for one who was risking absolutely nothing, she was certainly acting quite self-righteous. He tells her that when it all comes down to it, she is nothing but a hypocrite. Ruoxi screams for him to be silent. She declares she'll open it because she was never afraid. She calls them all a pack of cowards, ordering them to move aside. With that, she seizes the doorknob. The moment she twists it, a monstrous Jong Hung bursts in, tossing everyone aside, and boom. The entire room is stunned yet again into silence. The door is ripped from its very hinges. Ruoxi slowly pushes herself to her feet, but is instantly gripped by pure terror. The infected Jong Hung stares directly into her soul. He lunges at her as the whole room descends into chaos. In absolute panic, she seizes the boy beside her, whimpering that she is terrified, and then she shoves him straight into the monster, telling him to shield his class representative. But from nowhere, a powerful kick comes flying in. It's Yi Bai, and he just drove his heel deep into her ribs, essentially offering her up as a sacrifice for Jong Hung. Yi Bai wears a faint smile as the undead monster grabs her, aiming straight for her head. But just then, a figure with a screwdriver completely shatters the zombie skull. The girl is now coated in undead viscera, and Yi Bai, he just watches on with a grim smirk. She stumbles out of the doorway, entangled with the corpse of the zombie, and looks back at Yi Bai, pleading for him to come save her. But his only thought is how she created the living hell of his past. He simply hefts the shattered door from the ground and begins to barricade the opening. She screams out, "What are you even doing?" As he seals her fate outside, he turns and says to the others, "Why are you not blocking this door?" The rest of them, completely terrified, hastily help him. They start heaping up tables, boxes, whatever they can grab against the entrance. Outside, you hear Ruoxi hammering against the wood, yelling about their actions while she begs them for aid. They're sealing her out for good. She's shrieking that she is the class rep and they can't do this to her. The other girls are too frightened to act, while the boys continue to build the wall. And Ibai, he's just observing it all happen. After some time, the torrential rain ceases, and they notice they no longer hear Ruashi's frantic voice. Now all eyes are on Yabai, and they are filled with fear. They all knew him as this incredibly kind, reserved kid, so why is he transformed into this monster? Yabai glances around at the group. The girls are all weeping and trembling. He asks, "Why does everyone seem so afraid of me?" They all hastily deny the accusation. Then the blonde boy from earlier actually gives him thanks, stating Ruoxi would have been the death of him. And in an instant, they're all on Ibai's side, saying that girl was twisted. She was perfectly fine sacrificing another person to save herself. Yabai lets out a grin. "Since you are all so courageous now," he says, "how about we unseal the door? I want to investigate something out there." They're all asking why he would venture outside. He explains to them. He feels regret for kicking her and needs to check if she is safe. His former friends protest, saying it's death with all those monsters outside. But Yabai just roars at them to clear the path. Terrified, they begin to move all the debris they had stacked. They crack the door open, and he cautiously steps onto the field. He scans the area, and he declares that it seems both the rep and Jong-hoon have vanished. The sun is rising, and strangely, the horde is gone. And at that very moment, the group slams the barricade shut on him from the other side. They start shouting they aren't letting a deranged killer back inside, that he would surely murder them all. Ibai, however, appeared to not care in the slightest. He just continues his walk across the campus grounds, while everyone inside thinks he's completely lost his sanity. That's when a blonde boy lets out a gasp. There's a single female zombie standing directly before Yabai, and he is just calmly strolling towards her. The undead creature sees him, but he calmly continues his approach. He smirks and tightens his grip on the tool. In the next instant, he charges straight at her, and everyone is left to wonder, why is he rushing towards the zombie? The wretched creature did not even register what was happening when it took a heavy blow to the skull. And boy, he did not relent. He drove her straight down into the dirt. And that was the end of it. The group inside was now convinced that boy had gone utterly mad. Our protagonist, on the other hand, was quite winded for someone who just did all that. Yabai went to the creature's corpse and extracted a small pearl. He grinned and said that he had acquired an energy stone. This was not just the source of the plague, but also an incredibly vital resource in this new era. Even a footfall from behind him, he turned and saw an old, rotted zombie. The monster was shambling towards him slowly. Yabai raised the weapon once more. He ran at it, and everyone inside watched him dispatch another. The girl was on the verge of vomiting, while the blonde boy demanded to know why he had become so feral. For what he could ever recall, that kid had always been a coward. So how could he have changed so drastically? Everyone started to think about how terrifying he truly was, and they were sure he was faking being a different person. One of the boys said it was wise to allow him back inside, since he was incredibly strong and could kill the undead for them. But the others refused to endorse that, because he was a madman and might end up killing all of them. Suddenly, the window glass exploded. Yabai asked if his old classmates were still present. He beckoned them to come out and hunt the zombies, because it was, in his words, a lot of fun. The poor souls were all shaking in fear. Just then, they warned him something was right behind him. A zombie had emerged and lunged directly for him. But Yabai just glanced over, extended his leg, and kicked it square in the chest. Once again, he gripped his tool and struck in the jaw. As he finished off the undead creature, the group watched, horrified, from behind the glass. Another one had fallen dead onto the ground. Our hero wiped his face, while everyone else was simply too stunned to speak. He noticed their terrified gazes and made a comment that he didn't know if this fluid would infect him or not. He said he wanted to continue on with his friends, but it was far too dangerous since he might harm them. With that, he departed, saying he wished they would all survive. His former friends wondered if he would truly leave them just like that. And with his departure, they were all abandoned inside that shack. Our hero walked alone through the abandoned campus. He ascended the staircase while thinking that this was the dawn of the apocalypse. On day one, half of the population was infected, and politics, the economy, and society had all crumbled to dust. The number of monsters continued to grow, along with all of humanity's fear and utter despair. Professor Jeanhan dubbed this era the Dark Age. In his past timeline, he had to sever his own arm just to survive that day. For 15 years, he survived starvation, hopelessness, and torture until meeting a man called the Mechanic, who possessed the power to send him back into the past. Calmly, he made his way through the deserted streets. Some people watched his progress from their hiding spots, wondering if he had absolutely no fear of death. Others proposed inviting him to take shelter with them, but they decided that if he travels all alone, he must be extremely dangerous. Yabai ignored them and walked by a park. The zombies were there, completely motionless, apparently unaware of his presence. But as soon as he looked away, those wretched fiends descended upon him. The blond boy shouted that the kid was about to perish, and the old man said, it was sheer madness to go searching for food in a world like this. However, Yabai merely cracked a smile, raised his weapon again, and struck the first one in the skull. One more powerful swing, and another zombie crashed to the ground. A brutal slam into the pavement, and the men watching wondered where all that bravery came from. But another person was observing him from behind a drawn curtain. The girl whispered that eventually she would kill that wretched man. What's this about? Our hero is slaying zombies. Why are you so mad at him, girl? After dispatching 3 of the creatures, our hero was drained, but then he detected something else, a swarm of crows approaching from behind. 3 additional zombies were drawing near. He instantly knew he couldn't face all of them. The zombies lurched toward his position, and he fled. He understood the earlier commotion had drawn a horde to this location. From inside of a different building, a punk watched, saying that kid was running directly towards them. That's when Ibai spotted a convenience store beside him. He began hammering on the metal door, crying out to be let in. He looked at the camera and said he needed help because he was being pursued by a massive horde of zombies. The old man on the other monitor said it was preposterous and no one would ever unseal the door for a boy like that. But unexpectedly, the security gate began to rise. At that very second, a zombie rounded the corner. It lunged at him and Ibai struck it in the head again. But an elderly woman was coming down the street and he hit her in the face with his weapon as well. He dove underneath the gate and tumbled inside. The zombies started pounding on the metal door. But for now, he was finally safe for a moment. And man, what he discovered was a fully stocked base. From behind a desk, a young girl was carefully observing him. Meanwhile, at the nightclub just next door, the punk was watching and remarked that it appeared the kid was killing everything. The guy with the mohawk turned and informed Brother Centipede that a mere student had killed 6 zombies all by himself. The most cliched villain in the apocalypse laughed, as usual, flanked by several women. He said it seems like those zombies were weaker than he imagined. If a single student could do it, it obviously would pose no challenge for them. Back inside the convenience store, Yabai had a small smile. He looked at the counter and told the person there to emerge, because he had already spotted her presence. Furthermore, he needed her to hand over the key to lock the entrance. But the person on the other side did not make a sound. He let out a deep sigh and started to moan in pain, claiming that his wound was agonizing and he was near death. Suddenly, the girl appeared from behind the counter. She stood before him and threw him a medical kit. But man, he is ruthless. He grabbed her swiftly by the arm. For the love of God, don't let this become a romance. She looks like she's someone's child. Yabai demanded that she hand over the remote, promising her that he would not do anything. She asked what remote he was referring to, but she was clearly clutching in her hand. He reached out for it and snatched it from her grasp. Immediately, she scurried away in a state of panic. She moved behind the counter and continued to watch him. Man, he kicked one of the store shelves, which startled the poor girl. He said she was a complete fool for trusting him when he faked his injury. Some time had passed, and a storm began to brew. Our hero was laying on the bed, completely exhausted. The same small girl was now tending to his severed arm. Obviously, Ibai was experiencing excruciating agony. After a short while, she said she was finished, and our hero thanked her for her help. She opened up the medical kit and said that the world outside was truly dangerous, and her father had ordered her to remain here. He could recover here, and later she would provide him with food. With that statement, she departed from the room. While he thought she was far too compassionate, she was the single person out of all the doors he had knocked upon who had allowed him inside. If not for her, he would have been devoured by those zombies lurking outside. But after some time passed, he heard her ask what some men were doing. This immediately jolted Yabai from his thoughts. A group of men were standing before the storefront, and the man known as Centipede thanked her for unsealing the door for his companions. Frightened, the young girl asked if they only wanted some food, because they were starving. He said that was precisely what they needed, and now every morsel of food in this place belonged to him. She told them her father would be returning very soon, but the men said her father had already been used as bait for the undead, and now that no one was around, they could commence playing a little game. Yabai stood in the corner, listening as they extinguished the girl's life. After they pilfered the food, they tossed her corpse to the floor, calling her a simpleton. But now, back in the present timeline, he knew this time he was required to save her first. He needed to ensure she grasped how truly savage this apocalyptic world really was, even if that required her to see him as an evil person. He then knocked upon the door, and it appeared he was going to take this role quite seriously, because he instantly began to shout, demanding to know why she was disturbing him. She offered an apology, saying she had laundered his clothes since they were so filthy. He grew even more furious when he saw her act of kindness. He ordered her to discard those clothes and to get out of his sight. A bit humiliated, she said that would be acceptable. He then thought to himself that with such a gentle spirit, it would be difficult for her to survive in a world such as this. However, taking a nice hot shower like this felt amazing, since in the coming days, all the water would become contaminated. He concluded his bath, aware that luckily, this convenience store had ample food and water supplies. The objective now was to find some useful gear and weaponry. Gazing into the mirror, he noted that being young again was truly magnificent. No aching back, no burning sensation in his legs, and being young was simply unbelievable. The singular disadvantage was that even his abs were now gone. He opened the bedroom door and noticed she had left a suit for him. Instantly, he yelled, asking how he could possibly fight zombies while dressed in something like that. The scene cuts back to the nightclub. Centipede told everyone to pay close attention. That convenience store certainly had provisions and alcohol, but it would not hold out for long. The strategy was to get outside, slay the zombies out front, and then steal every last thing from that place. Not to forget that the maniac knew of a cute little girl in there, so it should be simple enough to take everything over. He then ordered his brothers to go and slay the zombies, so they could begin their raid immediately. The undead creatures continued to hammer at the front of the store. Meanwhile, Yabai approached and got the girl's attention. He told her to stop acting so foolish and said he had a question. He wanted to know why she was all alone and what became of her family. She responded that her father had left to find more supplies, but he had not yet come back. In that instant, he slammed his fist on the table, asking if she was foolish for letting him inside all alone like that. What if he had intended to do something terrible to her? How would she even protect herself? Terrified, the girl explained that he had said he was injured and covered in blood, so she was afraid of allowing him to die out there. But yet again, he shouted at her, asking if she had failed to see he was being pursued by a massive group of monsters. With a nature like that, she would only be a liability, so it would be far simpler for him to kill her and save himself the trouble. However, since being alone from now on would be quite dull, she would have to follow his orders. He warned her that she must do exactly as he commanded, or he would end her life on the spot. The crew from a nightclub was advancing toward the zombies, or rather, the zombies were swarming towards them. They charged out filled with bravado. But after witnessing the first of them being devoured, they all began to waver. They started to question if these creatures were different from the ones that the student had slain. But Centipede ordered them to push forward, or he would kill the entire group himself. However, one of them broke rank and ran, yelling that dying to the undead was a more terrifying fate. Centipede then seized him by the hair, threw him directly to the zombies, and said, "Your final wish has now been granted." The fool cried out, "How could you do such a thing?" while he was being ripped to shreds. The remainder of the group was dispatching the monsters. The issue was that Centipede quickly saw there were too many, and they would be forced to retreat. The quiet had been shattered by the horde that pursued them. Meanwhile, the convenience store had become quite tranquil. The young girl climbed the stairs and delivered some ramen to our hero, stating she had prepared it for him. She also provided the hot water he had requested, but he ordered her to leave the area because she had done plenty. He warned her that unless he specifically called for her, she should not enter his room again. With that, she shut the door and he prepared his noodles. He began eating right away because he was completely famished. As soon as he tasted it, he became excited and smiled, saying that it was extremely delicious. However, our hero picked up the bottle of hot water. He started to get closer, and Centipede asked what he was doing. Our guy removed the cap and poured it directly on it. Man, his hand instantly turned red and began to blister. Centipede was in sheer agony, but couldn't release his hand or he would fall to the zombies below. Ibai told him he was a fool for begging for assistance, while threatening to take someone's life. But in that moment, someone tugged on his shirt sleeve. When he glanced back, it was the little girl telling him to cease. She warned him it would be much wiser to let that man inside and to stop causing him pain. This stunned both the protagonist and Centipede. He immediately turned to the girl and ordered her to get out of there because he had not summoned her to his room. But she continued to insist, saying that her father had taught her never to harm other people. He stood completely still for a moment. Then he questioned if she wasn't frightened of that man entering the store and killing her. Centipede, however, swore he would never do something like that. He was just incredibly hungry and found himself in this bind because he was trapped by zombies. The outside was now swarming with creatures, so unfortunately, he was no longer able to leave. Yabai was furious that the girl had ruined his entire plan to kick the man squarely in the head and allow the zombies to feast on him. Then he spotted the box cutter sitting on the table. Centipede entered, thanking her for her immense kindness, but he warned her that now he was inside. This was now his own domain, and anyone who dared to refuse his orders would have to die. Now the young girl understood she had made a grave error. The sky had darkened, and there were zombies all around. A bald man and a boy were barricading the door. It was the last survivors from the nightclub, and the bald man cursed that it was that bastard's Centipede's fault for leading them all into this mess. The girls were all crying out in panic, and they had no idea what to do, because by now that fiend was surely dead. The worst part of it was that the wooden door was about to splinter under the creature's assault. Outside, the bald man saw no possible way to hold this position. He shouted at the girls, telling them to help him block the door. But as he glanced at them, he thought to himself he wished he could have enjoyed them longer. But sadly, that was not going to be possible. The sole method of survival was to escape and leave them to die. Centipede stood directly in front of Yabai, smiling. He told the girl that she was quite cute, but far too foolish to believe he wouldn't kill someone. However, now that he was safely inside, he would offer her the opportunity to yield and become his slave. Then he looked to his side and said he must deal with the fiend, who poured boiling water on his hand first. As a form of revenge, he would ensure the boy suffered as much as he could. But Ibai stood in silence, holding the box cutter tightly in his hand. The young girl continued to insist, saying that her family was the owner of this convenience store. She added that on the lower level, there was chocolate, plenty of snacks, and more than enough food for everyone here. The two of them stood in silence for a brief second. The girl began to smile, saying they could all eat their meals together and live peacefully. Centipede completely lost his patience, lunging at her, asking if she was trying to mock him. But the sharp box cutter came in. In a flash, Yabai slashed deeply into the man's hand. Centipede let out a scream of agony, but Yabai spun the box cutter around, gripping it in a reversed fighting hold. Centipede managed to block his attack. Our hero had been aiming for his throat, but it was undeniable that the man was much larger, and he landed a powerful kick to Ibai's abdomen. Our hero was thrown violently backwards, and the girl collapsed to the ground with him, bleeding. Yabai crossed the room on his way to him. He lamented that this was the first time in his entire life that someone had angered him to this degree. Yabai was shocked that, with a single kick, the man had managed to fracture some of his ribs. At that moment, Centipede began to stomp on his leg. Our hero was in pure agony. Centipede demanded to know how he killed a zombie so easily before. Ibai said he would never reveal it, and the man replied that he was practically begging for death. He started stomping down on him, saying eventually he would change his answer. The small girl was just watching everything. Ibai was using this as a chance to teach her a vital lesson, but the cost was becoming far too great. He then told the large man to stop, saying he would tell him. Centipede told him to explain himself quickly, vowing he would cause the least amount of pain but Ibai spat a mouthful of blood in his face. Of course, this did not please the large man. He threw Yabai hard against the wall and kicked him in the stomach once again. Centipede asked if he found this to be amusing and began stomping on him yet again. Man, he told Yabai to die and hit him square in the jaw. I believe our hero's attempt to teach a lesson has gone too far, but that is when the tide finally began to turn. The little girl whipped him hard across the neck. Centipede turned, asking what she possibly thought she was doing. He shoved her with great force, throwing her down to the ground and seizing the box cutter. He screamed out in a fit of rage, saying they were both going to die. But his time was finally up. and Ibai landed a heavy blow to the back of his neck with a stick. With that final strike, Centipede collapsed unconscious on the floor. Our hero was drained and could hardly keep himself standing. The terrified little girl asked him if he had just died. Seeing the large pool of crimson juice, she wondered if she had truly taken someone's life. Ibai then gently placed a hand on her shoulder. He told her it was all right because she had done what was required. Besides, that bastard was a truly evil man. Confused, she asked why he had behaved in such a way, when all she had done was attempt to assist him. But that's when Ibai informed her that bastard wasn't dead. She appeared excited and said that if that was true, she should try to save him. But our hero shoved her aside. He threw her out of the room and said he had never encountered anyone as foolish as her. He slammed the door, muttering that this girl truly angered him. Not to mention that the bastard had now soiled his entire room. He grabbed Centipede by his leg and dragged his body to the window. Then with a powerful kick, he sent him flying towards the zombies. And he fell down to the ground like a worthless piece of trash. And for the undead, it was a grand feast. And they all began to gather. That's when the poor man opened his eyes, just in time for him to realize he had become their next meal. Ibai muttered from his window that Centipede was fortunate he hadn't removed his limbs first. That is when he heard a different sound. Close by, in the building directly across from him, a boy was hanging, trying to escape from the zombies. The kid was about to lose his grip, shaking and yelling for them to just leave him be. Then another person called out to him. It was Yabai, asking if anyone else was still alive in that place. The guy said that, regrettably, he was the only one remaining. They had held the door shut until one of the men let go, and then the zombies poured inside and devoured everyone. With a voice full of fear, he begged Yabai to help him so he could shelter in the store. But our hero told him that was not going to be possible, and if he did not get out of there very soon, he would end up just like that man on the ground. The boy looked down and saw Centipede being consumed. Disgusted, he turned away, mustered his courage, and leaped to the adjacent ledge. The kid was a parkour master, able to keep his balance on the thin railing. He ran across it as our hero just watched him go. He was quite disappointed that those damn zombies hadn't managed to kill them all. From a nightclub, some time went by, but the zombies still lingered right outside of that place. The window was shattered, and our hero opened his bedroom door. Outside, the little girl was still patiently waiting. He asked her what she was still doing there, and if he hadn't instructed her to go and take a bath. However, she peeked inside of the room and saw that the body had already been taken away. He told her not to stare for too long, but the man had already been moved to the first floor. The girl asked if he managed to escape. He replied that in the way he had tossed the man out, only a god would have been able to survive. She looked a little bit sad and asked why he had to kill the man like that. Even if he had been a terrible person, they still had a chance to help him change. But Yabai slammed the door right above her head. He asked if she was so foolish she hadn't learned her lesson. After everything that had just transpired, no matter what she tried to do, the girl echoed the dire word apocalypse, claiming he was speaking utter nonsense. Yet Yabai merely turned his back, declaring it was pointless to waste his breath. So he was heading to cleanse himself again. But she rose, stating she needed to speak with him. She stumbled foolishly and then seemed to collapse. Fortunately, Yabai managed to catch her fall. He rushed to the room, placing her on the bed. His first thought, had the plague taken her? He saw no bite marks, so perhaps it was only a fever. He recalled there should be medicine somewhere in this room. Now, it all made sense why she appeared so frail when they first met. At last, he located the first aid box. But upon opening it, atop the pills was a small pink diary. He began to leaf through its pages. It was a register of blood donors, connecting the girl's state to what was written. He started to piece it together. It was a medical journal of sorts. He wondered what she suffered from and kept reading. Her name was Yuyuer, and her age was only 14. Worse still, she was afflicted with leukemia. He gently lifted her shirt and began to see why her body was covered in bandages. Maybe because she had been given so much. She always wished to give back to others. But tragically, that very compassion she offered the world was now extinct. That's when he reached into his own pocket and remembered he still possessed the apocalypse essences. He questioned if they would have any effect on this human sickness, but a deep fog was descending outside. The vicinity was still crawling with monsters. Fortunately, the night remained peaceful, and after a while, the dawn began to break. The undead were all standing perfectly still, but for some unknown reason, the sun drew their gaze. Sometime later, Ibai finally awoke. He dozed off on the table and was shivering from the cold, but he quickly realized he was being observed. When he turned, he saw Yuyur standing just beyond the doorway. He found it peculiar that she was already awake and inquired if her condition had improved. She remained silent for a long moment. Before she could even respond, he ordered her to go and make some coffee. As she departed, he told her to wait for a moment. He instructed her to gather equipment and supplies, because they were going to venture out to find her father. Yuyur appeared somewhat bewildered and asked if they were truly going to attempt that. Ibai confirmed that yes, they were, especially since she claimed her father left to get provisions, so they couldn't just abandon him out there. This frustrating girl only protested, saying her father told her to be obedient, to stay in the store, and not to come looking for him. The protagonist then asked how long her father was gone. She lowered her gaze and said it was 3 days now. He then asked what his usual time was. She answered that it was typically half a day. He then told her to use her own intellect and questioned why he had not returned yet. But she shouted that nothing was wrong because 3 days prior, he had called and said he was on his way back. However, our hero was truly ruthless and asked if she got any other calls from him in the last 3 days. He could have been bitten by monsters or fallen into a snare and might be awaiting a rescue. Shouldn't they be out there attempting to save the man? But she looked down again and replied. Her father ordered her not to leave. No matter what transpired, our hero rose, angry, calling her a fool. He asked why she refused to go and help her own father, who could be in desperate need of assistance. Why was she so willing to save that criminal before, but refused to go out and find her own father now? And he told her to realize he was not asking for her permission. He could enter right here and venture out all by himself. But because she had saved him, he would first find her father as repayment. He commanded her to stop her whining and pack her belongings, because they were departing now. The poor girl fled in a panic and nearly tumbled down the stairs. Yabai was becoming drained from these pointless conversations. Outside, the sea was in ruins, and the zombies still stared up at the sky, until abruptly, they heard a noise coming from behind them. A large jeep was speeding down the road. Man, these pathetic zombies think they can stop it with their hands. Yeah, right? It grabs them by the torso. They all go flying to the sides, completely obliterated. Meanwhile, back inside the convenience store, our protagonist was gathering provisions and getting ready to depart. He glanced behind him and asked why she was hiding, and if she had finished packing up all of her things. Looking quite dejected, she seemed both cute and melancholy. Our hero asked her why she was wearing that type of attire, as they were certainly not going to a party. But he quickly dismissed the thought, asking where the instant ramen he had requested was. She handed it to him, and he began to eat, while she glanced around the now empty store. He started to strategize what to do once they opened the gate. At the very minimum, he would need to kill a horde of zombies and find a functional vehicle. Then he would need to ensure she got into the car safely without making any foolish moves, which would be quite a challenge. He saw she was eating some spicy snacks and asked for one. The girl was feeling down for being constantly berated. However, a new figure was approaching the convenience store, just as she was giving him the requested snack. They were standing there when in the next instant, everything was thrown into chaos. The place was a total wreck, and Ibai wondered if it had been a powerful earthquake. But a huge vehicle had smashed halfway into the store. The protagonist was completely shocked, wondering why something had breached their safe haven. The car just sat there, and then suddenly, the door swung open. A man in tactical gear stepped out and started to laugh. A bald, heavy man said he was lucky to have found a supply store. He kicked a nearby zombie and then stomped on it, saying that a good monster was a dead monster. He made his way towards the store, stating it was time to finally fill his stomach. As soon as he entered and saw the shelves of snacks, his eyes completely lit up. He immediately got down, licking his lips and saying he had discovered his favorite kind. The city's center was completely barren, so he traveled out to this remote area and apparently struck gold. But that is when the box cutter made its appearance. Yabai warned him to drop everything he held and to not make a move. The last pest that had entered had already been dealt with, and he would not hesitate to deal with another. But in that instant, the heavy man moved and hurled snacks at his face. Ibai closed his eyes for just a second, and the man grabbed the supplies and made a run for it. He ran back to his vehicle and slammed the door closed. But man, Ibai appeared right at the window and was not going to allow him to escape so easily. He called the man a disgusting pig and told him to perish. Just as the cold steel was about to taste blood, the man pleaded for his forgiveness, saying that he completely surrendered. But of course, that's when Yuyur told him to stop killing people. She spoke awkwardly and saw both men staring at her. She sheepishly clarified that she didn't want him to die because he had caused all this damage to the store, so someone needed to make reparations for it. Yabai just observed as the heavy man trembled in fear. He made a grim smile and said that she was correct. He turned his gaze to the heavy man and told him he would have to surrender the vehicle as payment for the damages he caused to the store. He then told Yuyuer to bring her bags and load them into the car because they were now leaving. She complied, but then she noticed something. The heavy man offered an apology, saying he had only broken the door because he was starving and was unaware they were inside. Then Yuyuer stepped out with her bags and was startled. There was a massive horde of zombies approaching due to the crash. The heavy man was completely terrified, wondering why there were so many of them, especially since he had just eliminated a large number. Yuyuer quickly scrambled inside the vehicle. Yabai closed the door, and the heavy man told them to strap in. He immediately slammed the gas pedal because multiple zombies had already latched onto the vehicle. Yuyuer clutched her seat as the truck plowed over everything, and the heavy man hit the accelerator hard. Man, he was tearing his way through the city, but the bastard seemed to be really enjoying it. He was even drifting as if he were in some kind of action movie. Yabai ordered him to drive with more care, or he was going to receive a nice gash to the neck. The heavy man tried to give an excuse that they needed to dispatch the zombies first, or they would be unable to pass through. But that's when our hero asked Yuyuer what address her father had gone to for provisions. She said that during his last message, he was making his way to the Fudong supermarket. The heavy man said that location was pure madness, since it was always crowded and must be infested with zombies. But Yabai told him to stop his complaining and just drive, or he'd be the one to meet his end there. They seemed to have escaped from the horde, and the heavy man said if things became dull, he could play some nice music. At least while on the road, they could relax for a moment. A zombie lying on the road with a tree branch in its hand scraped its arm as the large truck drew near. The heavy man showed no mercy and ran directly over it. As he hummed along to some music and ate his candy, he plowed right through every one of them. Clearly, this bastard was enjoying the entire spectacle, and Yabai told him to be more quiet because he wanted to rest. But the heavy man said not to be concerned as the vehicle was sturdy, so there was no danger at all. Yabai, however, raised the box cutter and asked if he was going to disobey. In that instant, everything went completely quiet and he stopped the truck. Our protagonist told him that he did not order him to stop the vehicle, just to cease making so much noise. That is when the heavy man noticed the gas tank was empty. Yuyuer and our hero cried out in sheer frustration. He cursed the bastard, who then offered an apology, claiming he forgot there wasn't a gas station nearby. He began eating as fast as he could, saying that if he was fated to die, he might as well perish with a completely full stomach. Yuyuer, on the other hand, began to hear some strange noises approaching them. A massive zombie appeared just outside of her window. The truck had stopped directly in front of Public Park. A new horde of zombies was starting to encircle them. The protagonist knew that even if the truck held up, they were all going to die trapped inside this steel coffin. But that's when a large knife behind his seat captured his attention. The zombies were hammering against the glass window. Suddenly, someone kicked open the door, sending it flying from its hinges. Yabai calmly exited, and the zombie moved towards him. He unsheathed the machete and sliced clean through another one. Inside, Yuyuer was terrified as she watched the whole scene. But our hero was practically celebrating, saying that the blade was quite sharp. Another zombie drew near, and he commented that for amateurs like these, this type of weapon was more than sufficient. He landed yet another strike as two more approached. He glanced to the side and kicked one in the chest, and then dispatched the other one. The heavy man inside the truck was completely stunned. Watching it all, another massive zombie fell to the ground. He could not comprehend that this student was so powerful. Even Yuyuer was thoroughly impressed. The hero banged the handle of the knife on the truck and ordered the heavy man to get out. The heavy man was utterly petrified, but our hero warned him that if he remained inside, he would perish sooner or later anyway. There were other vehicles parked outside, so maybe they would be fortunate enough to find some fuel in one of them. While he took care of the zombies, the heavy man was supposed to begin siphoning some gas. He reminded him that he had been singing for the whole ride, so he had better know how to operate a vehicle. Yabai told Yuyuer to remain in the truck and not to move, as it was far too dangerous. Yabai then told the heavy man to come along with him. The heavy man, still not fully prepared mentally, said that they required some more time. But in the following second, Yabai had already killed the first zombie. The poor heavy man could not believe that this boy had no fear at all. Yabai advanced, slicing his way through another one. He looked back and told the man to pick up the pace. But then the heavy man recalled that there were some gasoline cans in the truck's bed. He understood how useful Yabai was and wanted to exploit him further. Yabai dispatched yet another zombie. He glanced back and asked what the man had said. Embarrassed, the heavy man said he had been in shock and completely forgot. But if they could wait a moment, he filled up the tank. Yabai told him to wait and handle that later. The heavy man was utterly confused. Our hero said he required help gathering something. He opened his palm, revealing a bright green pearl. He explained that they were located inside the brains of zombies, and while he killed them, the heavy man was supposed to retrieve them. The poor man, who had never done such a thing before, started to break out in a sweat. But Yabai said it was simple and showed him how it was done. He swiftly demonstrated the entire procedure and asked if the heavy man understood him. Obviously, the man said it was far too disgusting and he would rather stay in the truck. Yabai warned him that if he returned to the vehicle, he would just end up as ground beef. The heavy man then asked how he was supposed to do it with no knife. Our hero told him to use his bare hands, saying he was going in, and if the man did not assist, he would be killed as well. With that, Yabai took a step forward and eliminated another zombie. The heavy man, disgusted, approached the very first zombie. He ran back to the jeep, grabbed a crowbar, and prayed for his own protection. The protagonist said they had no more time to waste, and told him to begin collecting them immediately. But the heavy man, hesitant, wondered if the zombie was actually still alive. He struck it and then went to retrieve the pearl, impressed that it was much easier than he had anticipated. There really was a small crystal deep inside. He never would have thought the human head could create something like that. He then asked Yabai if they were worth a great deal. But Yabai just ordered him to be quiet. The heavy man began to wonder that maybe this was the reason humans had transformed into zombies, and he questioned if he should keep a few. Meanwhile, Yabai was dispatching yet another group. After a short while, he said that was sufficient, and they wouldn't concern themselves with the ones farther out. He thought to himself that adapting to this new body without any training was quite arduous. He turned and asked the heavy man how many he had retrieved. The heavy man was proud, saying he had gathered several. He said it was fun, and Yabai told him to clean and store them. Then it was time to fill up the tank so they could get moving. Yabai then went to check on Yuyuer. However, her illness appeared to have relapsed once again. He was alarmed and quickly grabbed her arm. Calling out her name, he placed a hand upon her forehead and saw her fever was much worse than before. He started a search through her travel bag, remembering that they had taken some medicine and water. The heavy man appeared and asked what was the matter with her, but Yabai told him to be silent and to fill the gas tank. After some time, she seemed to have stabilized slightly. The heavy man suggested that perhaps it was because she had been in the sweltering car for too long, and he asked if she felt any better. Yabai, not in any mood for small talk, threatened him once more. He said they had lost valuable time because the heavy man had pretended they were out of gas, and if he concealed anything else, the next person to meet their end would be him. The heavy man immediately offered an apology, vowing he would never hide anything from him again. Yuyuer seemed to awaken, and the truck continued on its journey. After some time, the heavy man praised our hero's swordsmanship and asked him what his name was. Our protagonist replied that it was proper to give your own name before requesting another person's. The heavy man said his name was Zhao Heng, and he was the owner of a workshop in the city. His friend had left this very truck at his shop for some repairs and never returned to retrieve it due to the apocalypse. Then our hero stated his name was Yabai, but abruptly, Zhao Heng slammed his foot on the brakes, and our hero had to brace himself as he drifted on the road. The protagonist immediately threatened him, demanding to know why he did that. Zhao Heng explained that the entire road before them was blocked by burning vehicles. The problem was that Yuyuer was still visibly trembling. At least now, she had managed to sit up. When she looked out of the window, Yabai said it did not appear like they would be able to reach the side where her father was. Yuyuer just watched on in silence, with not much else to say. The heavy man mentioned that there was an alternate route, but it would take a great deal longer, and he asked them if they still wanted to attempt it. Yabai replied in the affirmative. But first, they would need some new weapons and gear. He asked Zhao Heng if he knew where they could find an electrician or a weaponsmith. Zhao Heng thought for a moment and said he knew. He told them to relax. He would take them there right now. He had a close friend from his hometown who was a highly skilled and experienced blacksmith. This talk about a blacksmith captured Yebai's full attention. Zhao Heng said there was a high probability the man was still alive, and even if he were not, there would likely be a great number of items at his workshop. The machete he was holding was personally crafted by this man. Yebai thought it would be absolutely perfect to have plenty of resources to create a formidable weapon. Zhao Heng then began to recount stories about the times he and his companion had spent together, but Yuyuer told him to be more quiet, as our hero had dozed off for a short while. They traveled across the bridge into a different section of the city. Zhao Heng exited the car and stated, "Finally, the airplanes have made it. Many years had gone by, but that area still looked exactly the same." Our hero asked if that place wasn't just a garbage dump, and said this trip had better be worth their while, or Zhao Heng would be buried in this place. But as always, they would need to clear the area out before they could enter. Yebai asked Zhao Heng if any of those zombies resembled his friend. Zhao Heng appeared to be uncertain, and our hero just told him to go and collect the pearls. But then someone told him to wait a moment. It was Yuyuer from the truck, saying she wanted to help them. But Yebai told her she risked collapsing or being bitten, which would only be a hindrance. But she insisted, claiming she was fine now and would be very cautious. Zhao Heng said that since she was being brave, he would do the digging and she could gather the pearls. Yebai warned that if they were to be bitten, he would not hesitate to cut them down. Yuyuer noticed that Yebai did not feel any remorse. With that, he began to slice his way through the zombies. Meanwhile, the heavy man was retrieving the pearls and chatting with Yuyuer, who was placing them into a small bag. But we see that from a building nearby, someone appeared to be watching them through a pair of binoculars. A man smoking a cigarette was observing everything, and he seemed very angry. At that moment, another man entered the room, calling for Brother Lu Man. Brother Lu seemed to have PTSD, and there's no question. He had already eliminated another man. He said he would not repeat himself ever again. About knocking on the door before entering, another man outside was shaking in fear. Lu asked the newcomer what he had come to report to him. Trembling, the man said they had witnessed some people breaking into the blacksmith shop next door. Lu said he had already noticed that a long time ago. So why were they bothering him with this information now? The man explained that one of the 3 people who had arrived was killing all the zombies by himself, and he appeared to be incredibly strong. Lu just continued to think. He then turned his gaze to his servant, who was clearly one of their captives. She brought him a package of instant noodles. He tossed the noodles to the boy, telling him to eat them and provide the rest of the details later. The boy shouted his gratitude, saying Brother Lu was truly amazing. With that, Lu caressed the poor girl, who was clearly not happy to be there. She was so starved that she felt her knees weaken. Poor thing. Lu told the newcomer to get the heavy man out of there and to gather everyone to deal with the people on the lower level. Whoever eliminated them would receive a handsome reward. Back with Yebai and his group, they had finished killing every last one and just needed to retrieve one final pearl. He told the heavy man to check the perimeter of the house while he looked inside. He kicked down the door and discovered a fully stocked blacksmith's workshop. As he cautiously made his way inside, he inspected each piece of equipment. He saw the anvil, and the most peculiar part was that the forge was still burning. So someone must have been here very recently. The heavy man then commented that the house did not appear to have any damage, but he had no idea where the blacksmith had disappeared to. Our hero told him to bring some pearls and materials from the truck. He also instructed him to go and sharpen his blade. The heavy man wanted to know why he did not just take the weapons hanging on the wall, as they were already completed. But Yebai explained that in just 1 week, those types of weapons would become completely useless. Zhao Heng instantly realized that the young man was planning to forge a brand new weapon. Yebai told him to hurry up and bring him the damn pearls. Zhao Heng complained, saying his new companion was too impulsive. Yuyuer then asked him what she should do. With the forge burning hot and the pistons working, the first skill of the mechanic was, of course, construction. He placed the steel pipe into the flames and began to hammer away. Zhao Heng just stood behind him, watching everything. I'm impressed that someone so young knew the art of blacksmithing. Our hero told Zhao Heng to pour all the pearls into the crucible. The heavy man complied, and Yebai placed them into the fire, where they immediately began to melt. After a short while, everything had turned into a shimmering green liquid. Seeing the powerful aura rising, Zhao Heng realized it looked like some strange form of magic. Yebai then took a box cutter and opened a bottle of strawberry juice, pouring it into the now melted pearls, which started to combine together. He then took the liquid and poured it over the blade, which began to fuse. Zhao Hang stood there, just observing everything. Our hero resumed his hammering, and as he worked inside, the herd outside. Of course, this attracted Brother Lu's entire group. The man from before was completely scared to death, but the man with a very strong jawline was excited to acquire a lot of new resources by killing these weaklings. Another man with long hair said, the greatest prize would be spending some time with someone named Iguan. However, the man in the polo shirt stated, there must be a good reason Brother Lu wanted them to kill this boy. The best strategy was to wait until darkness fell, when their defenses would be lowered, and then they could finally launch their surprise attack. Back in the workshop, Ibai was busy with his craft, and the kid was truly creating some sort of futuristic mechanical device. Zhao Hang was beginning to think, our hero might be some kind of brilliant engineer from the top university in the entire country. Ibai would complete a single piece and return to forge another. From the water, he pulled out the first finished component. The heavy man looked at it and said the lightning pattern was so cool. Ibai just smiled and said that all the components were now ready. Now, it was time to unleash the true power of a mechanic. Meanwhile, Yuer placed the noodles on the table and began preparing to eat. Happy to be with Yabai, because at least she finally felt safe. Suddenly, someone clamped a hand over her mouth. It was the perverted, long-haired man who said he was taking her to a different place. But Yabai seemed to have heard something just before that. Inside the workshop, he had been sharpening the new blade. He fitted it into a mechanical housing and placed it on the table. Zhao Hang, curious, said he had only seen one of those in the movies. Yabai grabbed 2 large cables and said it was time to activate. He electrified the weapon, and it lit up with a brilliant green glow. The generator in the workshop was already sputtering, and the heavy man was truly impressed. Our hero declared, the Tier 2 blade is forged. Zhao Hang wanted one for himself. But then they heard Yu Yuner's voice from just outside. The next second, they were running to see what was happening. They came face to face with Brother Lu's entire gang. Ibai saw Yuer unconscious in the man's arms, and his expression became as cold as death. The bald man at the front told him to drop his weapon, or the girl would meet her end. But Ibai just raised his arm, slashed the earth, unleashing a shockwave that cleaved the man apart. In a panic, another of them tried to flee, but Ibai simply asked where he thought he was going. He slashed again, cutting through solid metal like it was paper. At that point, everyone was in a mad frenzy, trying to escape. Meanwhile, right behind them, Yabai had already created the first headless knight. The man who had spoken with Lu before told the other to release the girl, or they would not make it out of there alive. But the man insisted on making his escape, saying that if they did not get away, Brother Lu would execute them later. That is when a lightning-fast slash passed right before them. And from behind them, Yabai was slowly making his approach. But then Zhao Hang shouted, warning him that a horde of zombies was approaching from behind. The strange thing was that they were moving much faster than before, as if they had been injected with some kind of stimulant. Zhao Hang didn't know what to do and asked Ibai. He gripped the handle of his new blade, slashed at the zombies, and started to cut them all down. Next to him, Zhao Hang was just watching completely in awe as Ibai unleashed a devastating flurry of attacks. The problem was that, obviously, the 2 bastards were escaping. Zhao Hang then pointed out that they were running to that building. Ibai said, of course, and told the heavy man to stop just standing there, and to give chase to them with the vehicle. The heavy man scrambled into the truck, saying he understood. As he sped off, he saw that Ibai was still busy dealing with a lot of zombies. The mission to rescue the beautiful damsel now fell upon him. The men heard a noise coming up from behind them. Of course, it was Zhao Hang's large truck, and they jumped inside the nearby bus. Zhao Hang hit his brakes and saw that they had arrived at what appeared to be the main base of those guys. He got out of the truck, not knowing what to do since the main entrance was blocked by the bus, while the 2 from before gloated at Yabai. Other men inside the building observed him through the windows, seeing that he was just a single heavy man. They believed it would be simple to deal with him. They got off the bus and told him to leave the truck right there, where everyone inside that building would end up completely roasted. Zhao Hang said he was not afraid and told them to come at him. The man in the cap charged at him, boasting that he had killed more people than Zhao Hang had eaten. Chicken Man, considering Zhao Hang's large size, that was a very audacious claim. But Zhao Hang just bragged in return and said they were the ones looking for death. That's when the green crescent moon slashed through, and of course, the man was split cleanly in half, man. The bus behind him was completely shattered as well. Zhao Hang was astonished that our hero had already killed all the zombies, but Yabai just paid him no mind and told him to follow. They were going to go and save Yuyuer. He prepared another attack and sliced the bus completely in half. From behind some pillars, a group of men were preparing to charge at the two of them. Yabai, with nerves of steel, was walking out in the open. Seeing that Yabai was a fool, one of the men threw a sharp knife at him. But the boy, a true apocalyptic warrior, sensed the blade and easily deflected it. He slashed back, and another one was down. From behind some crates, a man threw a Molotov cocktail, but Ibai avoided it with a swift, dance-like step and sent another green crescent slash their way. Then someone discharged a firearm. Luckily for Ibai, he was like Neo from the Matrix and narrowly dodged the bullet. Brother Liu, watching, remarked that Ibai seemed quite brilliant. He said he was curious to know how Yabai was so powerful and asked if he wanted to share a drink with him. He tried to explain that he admired talented people like Yabai, but Yabai just raised his powerful blade. Liu pointed towards Yuyuer and told Yabai not to make a move. She was peacefully resting now, but in a single second, she could be dead. Liu said Ibai was being treated with a great deal of respect, so he should stop acting in such a way, or else he would find out if a bullet was faster than his sword. Ibai just stood there, calmly observing. Zhao Hang asked what they were going to do in a predicament like this. Suddenly, Ibai smiled and said that he agreed. He was working on a massive project and needed a large group of people. So if Liu assembled everyone together to negotiate, Ibai would give them all a chance. Liu questioned if Yabai truly wanted to talk with everyone and said that if that was the situation, they would gladly welcome him. Zhao Hang whispered to Yabai that it was madness to go up against everyone all alone, since they all had guns. But Yabai just told him if he didn't want to come, he should just get out of his sight. The heavy man was trembling, but said that if Yabai was going in there alone, he would much rather go too. Yabai thought to himself, this man was a true thorn in his side. Then, the man's henchman appeared, escorting him deeper into the den. Moments later, he was standing in the main hall, facing the full might of Brother Liu's entire faction. Liu offered a magnanimous welcome, declaring he held every survivor within a 15-kilometer radius. Here, he was the absolute ruler, a man called Liu Shang. He then demanded our hero's name and the nature of his business. Our hero introduced himself simply as Yabai. He stated that he recognized Liu Shang and asked if he knew the origin of this calamity. Liu was visibly taken aback, wondering how Yabai knew his name and the dawn of this hellscape. Yabai praised Liu for foreseeing the impending disaster and for gathering such an immense cache of supplies. He also correctly deduced that Liu's ultimate plan was to forge the infamous Nether Dragon Association. Liu Shang was now even more bewildered. He said he'd only spoken that name to his most trusted few. So how could Ibai possess all of this knowledge? But our hero simply revealed the pearl, stating he knew this was Liu's true interest. Liu Shang, his patience now exhausted, ordered Yabai to divulge every secret he held. Yabai paused for a dramatic moment. Then he spoke that the zombie plague could have begun as a virus that was transmitted by migratory birds, originating from foreign land. Others said it was a nuclear weapon created to cull the world's population. And the wildest rumor was that an alien meteor had struck, unleashing an extraterrestrial pathogen on Earth. Yabai stated he knew Liu Shang had heard of these three theories, which is why he moved his city center operations to this completely isolated stronghold. Liu Shang confirmed he knew a hidden truth about the virus. He produced 2 shimmering pearls from his pocket and admitted he didn't know why they manifested within the skulls of the undead creatures. But he deduced Ibai's grand ambition, and the strange sword he wielded were somehow connected to it. Ibai affirmed this, but said he required aid with a few matters. Liu Shang consented, but demanded to inspect the sword first. Our hero began to present it, but Liu Shang gestured to the captive girl beside him. No one wanted to see a tragedy unfold. Ibai fell silent, reluctantly passing over his blade. But the moment Liu's henchman touched it, he nearly buckled under its weight. He brought it to Brother Liu, exclaiming it was impossible to wield something so massive. Liu dismissed this and attempted to lift it himself, but when he realized he couldn't even budge it, he conceded the day was full of unexpected turns. He then told Ibai to begin his performance and state his demands. Our hero explained that in this new world, the moment a person begins to turn, a strange pearl starts to form within their brain. Initially, it's a dark, inert pearl, But the longer it remains inside the zombie's skull, the more raw energy it gathers. The energy within these pearls can assimilate with the human body and can also be harnessed to forge incredible weapons. Lu was captivated by the idea of the pearls adapting to a body. He asked if one could consume them to become progressively stronger. Yabai said that was a possibility, and most people just ended up becoming zombies. Lu needed to know what became of those who didn't turn. Yabai simply told them all to watch. He would demonstrate. The first step was activation. He connected the two massive power cables, generating a surge of green energy. It coursed through the room, and the generators burst into flames. With that, a total blackout ensued. Lu immediately demanded to know what was happening. But in that same instant, Ibai reclaimed his sword. He lunged directly toward Lu and brought the blade down. But the weapon missed its intended target. He countered with a lightning-fast shot. But Ibai evaded it. Ibai tightened his hold on the hilt and made a clean slice right through the man. The trembling man conceded that he had been too reckless. Our hero simply declared that the damn Nether Dragon gang would meet its end here today. In the future timeline, they would become infamous for the weapons they would forge and the system of slavery they would build. But before any of that could come to pass, he was going to eradicate every last one of them. Another powerful slash, and more bodies were left in pieces. The entire floor was completely annihilated. Ibai felt a sense of relief that Yuyuer was still unconscious. He gently caressed her, thinking that though the apocalypse was savage, he did not want her to witness these horrific scenes. But then, a figure appeared in the doorway. Ibai turned and saw, of course, the coward Zhao Hang who had fled the scene earlier. He entered, holding a bright flashlight, stunned that Yabai had wiped out every single one. Yabai simply affirmed that he had. He picked up a firearm from the ground and said that he had now successfully achieved his objective. Zhao Heng asked if they had come this far just for a weapon, and not to save Yuyuer. Yabai clarified that in this new world, weaponry had evolved greatly and was incredibly dangerous. Now, Zhao Heng was intrigued about what Yabai planned to make. He lauded Yabai's brilliant strategy to have him throw some pearls into the main generator, saying it was extremely clever. But then they heard a bottle shatter on the ground. They looked to the side and saw a girl collapse onto the floor. In a panic, she pleaded with them not to end her life. Zhao Heng, ever the simpleton, asked why there was a beautiful damsel in distress here. The girl explained she had been taken captive by Lu Shang and had been living there as if she were a slave, enduring torment daily, with no ties to his actual gang. Yabai then questioned if she knew where Lu Shang had concealed his remaining resources. She said that she did and offered to guide them there. On the way, Zhao Heng asked where she came from, and she said she was a native of the eastern city. In the midst of their conversation, they paused before a large elevator, and she said the main storage was unfortunately on the 6th floor. Ibai told Zhao Heng to hide with Yuyuer, while he went with the girl to investigate the storage area. Meanwhile, amidst the carnage of the battle, the man from before was crying out for help. He was horrified when he saw Brother Lu's body cleaved in two. Slowly, he tried to get up and saw a pearl right in front of him. He recalled Ibai calling it the black metal energy, and Lu Shang saying that ingesting it could make someone a god. Desperate, and with no other choices left, he consumed it in a single gulp. His pupils shrank, and veins bulged all across his body, as he started to convulse in sheer agony. Lightning flashed outside as Yuyuer awoke inside the room. She asked Zhao Heng about their location, and he simply told her to remain calm. He clarified that she had been abducted earlier, but he and Ibai had already rescued her. At that moment, Ibai walked into the room, seeing that she was now conscious. Zhao Heng asked if they had found anything of value, and Ibai confirmed that they had, but it would require until the next day to move it all. Zhao Heng then asked what happened to the girl, and Ibai explained that when he entered the storage room, she began to flee. He found it strange that she ran off, especially since a storm was raging outside. Ibai simply told him to forget about her, because he needed to get some sleep and recover, as the streets would be swarming with zombies. Now, the scene cuts to a girl taking a shower. She was calmly unwinding when a man appeared, saying that since she had mutated and was in his home, she needed to learn that nothing in life is free. He began trying to force open the door, telling her that aside from her body, she had absolutely nothing to give. She began to cry out for help, but the man said that with the heavy rain outside, no one would be able to hear her. But then the door splintered open. The man was shocked and went to investigate what happened. But boy, he made a very grave mistake. The girl heard a scream, and upon looking, saw that the man had been killed by a massive creature. The fool was thrown hard against the wall, and the blonde girl shrieked in absolute terror. The creature stood motionless, staring right at her. It began to extend its massive arm, and in her terror, she begged it not to come any closer to her. The monster hesitated for just a moment. It saw its own reflection in the mirror and crashed to the ground, crying out that it was not a monster. It began to question why it had transformed into this. The creature slammed its fists on the floor, yelling it didn't want to remain like that. The blonde, completely bewildered, asked who he was. He explained that he had been shot, but had ingested a zombie pearl, and his body began to mutate. The blonde was baffled by this talk of humans transformed by consuming the black metal from the pearls. The guy said that someone by the name of Yabai had explained it to him, saying he had retrieved the pearl from a dead monster's head. The blonde seemed to recognize the name and rushed toward him, asking if he had truly spoken the name Yabai. The deranged girl suddenly became quite brave, demanding to know Yabai's current location. The monster said that Yabai had recently come to the southern city and had massacred everyone in a building. It seems this blonde was the very same one from the beginning, and she declared her desire to kill Yabai. But the monster told her it was impossible to slay him because he was unbelievably powerful. The blonde said she was in this condition because of that bastard. The two of them were mortal enemies. She stood there a moment, thinking, and asked if he wasn't strong since he killed that other man. In a second, the monster explained that he felt incredibly strong, but he was unable to control his new power. Well then, he asked if she was not afraid of him, if this was indeed the same girl from before. It was Ruoxi, who laughed like a complete maniac. She gently stroked his mutated arm. She told him he was incredibly strong, and if he helped her kill Yabai, she would allow him to do whatever he wished. Man, this girl was completely insane, and she might realize he was a gigantic monster. But the crazier one became very excited, lifting her into the air and saying that in that case, he would assist her in killing Yabai. She smiled, saying the plan had been made. However, he did not seem to be doing very well, and she asked him what was the matter. He fell to his knees and began to scream. The night came and went, and a new day dawned. Our hero got ready inside the warehouse. He discovered some more instant noodles, cigarettes, and drinks. Yabai strapped his demonic sword to his back and said that now they had collected everything. It was time to finally leave. They walked down the stairs, talking about their supplies. But the heavy man suddenly became terrified. It looked like a meteor had landed directly on his truck. He started to weep, panicking, saying they couldn't even get the door open. Yabai was lost deep in thought, realizing the damage was too severe for just a simple rainstorm. He told Zhao Hang to move out of the way. Then he slashed the crumpled section. With that one strike, the truck became a convertible. Man, it looked like it came directly from the factory, with the mirrors installed back on perfectly. They all got inside the truck, and Zhao Hang cheered that at least the engines still worked. He then asked if they were going to find Yu or his father now. Yabai simply said yes, and they took to the road. The heavy man was very excited, saying that driving a convertible was truly amazing. But then they drew the unwanted attention of some zombies. Looking to the side, they saw a girl and a group of students fleeing from a massive horde. Those were Yebai's old classmates, and he was shocked that they were still among the living. The group was running for their lives, begging for assistance. The zombies were rapidly closing in. And of course, one clumsy girl stumbled and fell. The creatures were just about to get her when a green crescent slash cut right through everything. The students were completely stunned. They were even more shocked when they saw Yabai approaching. He smiled, saying he found his classmates once again. They all started to thank him, saying they were sure they were going to die. The blonde man remarked on how strong Yabai had become and asked him where he had obtained such power. Yabai ignored the question and asked where they were headed now. The blonde explained that after they escaped from the school, they heard about a safe camp being set up on an island, but many of them had been eaten by zombies on the way. One of them saw the truck and immediately begged for a ride. Another one came up, saying she was starving and asked if he had any food to share. Yu was just observing, seeing how desperate the other students were. Zhao Hang remarked that they were probably after his truck. At that moment, Yabai told every one of them to be silent. He warned them that the truck did not have much fuel remaining, so there was no way he could take them very far. Besides, they would have to do him a favor before asking for one. The former classmates, excited, said they would do anything he requested. Yabai smiled. He called over Zhao Hang and told him to explain the rules. This time, Zhao Hang thrilled, was now in command of the others. Our hero moved toward the zombies, saying he would clear them all out, and they should handle all of the cleanup. The students were completely bewildered, but Zhao Hang began to explain the procedure. He handed out the tools and started to extract the pearls. He smiled at everyone, saying it was a simple task, but one of the girls immediately fainted. Yu were completely unfazed, reassured everyone that the skulls were quite soft, so it was easy to get the pearls out. The group was absolutely terrified, wondering what this young kid had endured to be so calm. Zhao Hang then gave the tools to everyone, warning them all not to get themselves bitten. But the blonde man was now getting curious, wondering why the green dancer wanted all those pearls. Yabai continued killing while they all collected. 2 hours later, they had filled the entire bag. Yabai then told them to pass out some of the food, but Zhao Hang became furious, upset that Yabai was giving away food without asking him first. The students were all pleading, but the heavy man was not willing to give up a single piece. Right at that moment, a creature stepped on the truck's metal frame. The transformed monster from before had completely mutated. Ibai realized that this was an ability user who had now mutated. He immediately turned and yelled for everyone to run. But he nearly got slashed in the arm. He dodged backwards and unleashed another green crescent. But the monster was a cunning human as well and managed to dodge. And from nowhere, someone began to applaud. That damned Locust Queen had finally located our hero. Ibai was enraged when he laid eyes on Ruoxi. The students were completely confused, wondering why their class representative was here. Ruoxi said she had endured in every way she could, just so she could one day witness Yabai die. She immediately commanded the creature to kill him. Yabai could not understand why. The monster was now siding with the Locust Queen. The monster charged at him, leaving him no other choice but to fight. Yu called out his name, and suddenly a fireball struck. In between the two, on the roof, was another creature, a flaming, long-haired female zombie. And abruptly, the scene cuts to a large ship in the middle of the ocean. A guy was smoking a fine cigar, saying it was peaceful here because zombies could not fly. They were planning to live out their days there gradually, gathering resources from other boats, or perhaps not really, because one of the other boats just exploded. The fools were terrified, and here came the flame-haired zombie. The two of them screamed, but it was far too late. They were already gone, back to the present time. The creature was standing on top of the building before them. Both our hero and the transformed monster were staring up at him. Yabai knew it was another transformed ability user, and even worse, an elemental one. Ruoxi had no idea that elemental monsters exist, and she asked her monster if that thing was a companion of his. He replied that he did not know. But right then, the flame monster leaped from the roof toward him. The creature seized him by the neck, and everyone could now see that it was not a friend. Ruoxi's monster attempted to block the flame creature, asking who she was and why she was attacking him. She planted her foot on his stomach and kicked him with force, sending him crashing violently into a car. Then she turned and blasted him with a massive wave of fire. Poor Zhao Hang was weeping, devastated that their truck and supplies were now gone. But Yabai told him to stop worrying about that and start running. Our hero took off running, but Ruoxi still demanded her revenge. She ordered her monster to go and kill Yabai, who was trying to flee from the monster. He tried to explain that things were not looking very good for him. And then, from out of nowhere, the flame creature launched a massive fireball straight towards Yuyuer. The ground erupted and everyone was scattered. Yuyuer fell down to the ground. But of course, Ibai had saved her yet again. Now, with a massive wall of flames between them, Ibai told everyone to stop staring and start running for shelter. Zhao Hang asked where they were supposed to go. Ibai looked around and saw the entrance to a garage across the street. He started running, telling everyone else to follow him. Meanwhile, Ruoxi's monster was face to face with the flame creature. He tried to reason with her, saying they should not fight, and asked if she had also consumed the black metal energy to get that form. The flame creature whispered the words black pearl, but then she suddenly clutched her head in pain. She fell to the ground and said she didn't want to eat it. She explained that she had been restrained to a bed and was forced to consume it by a group of lunatics. She wanted to kill them all, and whoever kills gets the ashes. Ruoxi's monster said he had been forced to consume it as well, and could understand exactly how she felt. But Ruoxi was not interested in this conversation, and told them to hurry up, because Ibai was now escaping. She crossed her arms and sarcastically asked how they were going to get their revenge if they allowed him to leave. The monster reassured her, saying he could still track Yabai's scent. The flame creature asked, who this person was that they were so desperate to locate. The black monster clarified that Yabai was someone who knew about the pearls. Perhaps he also knew how to return them to being human. The flame creature, thoughtful, said that if there was a way to become human once again, she would join their cause. Meanwhile, our hero was running with his companions. But suddenly, a car came flying and exploded right before them. Following the scent, the monster had easily tracked them down, saying that their fight was not yet over. He knew that Ibai understood the secrets of the cursed pearl, so he had better start talking and not attempt anything foolish. Ibai realized he could not escape a fight with the monster. He told Zhao Heng to run away with Yuyuer, while he stayed behind to buy them some more time. But they soon came across the flame creature. Zhao Heng said that unfortunately, they were completely surrounded. Ruoxi began to laugh, sitting cross-legged on the car, saying there was no escape. Now, Ibai was growing tired of this damned woman. He told his friends to hide and not to come any closer, while he dealt with the two creatures. The black monster came charging straight at him. Ibai braced himself and leaped backwards. He pulled out his Glock and fired a shot. Ruoxi, the fool, got hit in her shoulder. She cried out in agony. The black monster was stunned. He thought Ibai was going to shoot at him. And if you thought our hero was done, you are wrong. He fired another bullet into her stomach before the monster could jump in and protect her. Ibai followed up with a powerful green slash, and the monster had to throw himself in the way to shield her. Just then, the flame creature attacked him from behind. She set the area ablaze. But Ibai dodged to the side, and she sent a firestorm his way. But he was able to deflect it with his new sword. Meanwhile, Yuyuer and Zhao Heng were watching. Yuyuer pulled a hatchet from her bag and threw it at the flame creature, but just bounced off of her head without doing any damage. The creature turned around, and Zhao Heng asked what she had done. But with that brief distraction, Ibai nearly landed a blow on the creature's head. However, his true target was the water pipe above, which burst and sent water raining down upon the flame creature, dousing her. With that, Ibai seized the opportunity and slashed right at her. She screamed in pain for a brief second, but Ibai pulled his sword back and almost struck her foot. The creature tried to escape, and Ibai was face to face with the black monster once again. The monster warned Ibai that he would pay for this in the future. Worn out, the two creatures fled from the scene. Man, Ibai made every single one of them run away. But exhausted, he collapsed down to his knees. Yuyuer asked if he was now hurt, but he said no. He was just relieved that they had all survived. Two ability users in a situation such as that. The heavy man asked if he knew the origin of these new creatures. Ibai remained quiet for just a second before explaining what occurs when some humans ingest those pearls. Most of them become zombies, but there is a small possibility that some will become a type of creature known as an ability user. The problem is that this only happens once in 10,000 cases, and it is even rarer for them to keep their own consciousness. Zhao Heng wanted to know how Ibai already knew all of this. The protagonist replied that he would explain more about it later, but their current objective was to figure out where to go next. Zhao Heng then recalled that they were without a truck or food. Ibai found this very strange, because the apocalypse seemed to be advancing much more quickly than it had in his past. And before things became even more dangerous, he needed to create much stronger weapons. Outside, it began to rain once again. And the worst part was that the truck was truly destroyed. Zhao Heng began to cry, saying that at least they could salvage a few of the resources. And the worst of it all was that those damn monsters had thrown all the cars before the garage to prevent them from making an escape. So now they had none. He handed a coat to the two of them, saying that, unfortunately, it was the only thing he had to shield them from the rain. Our hero then asked Yuyuer what the problem was. She said that she had actually been to this location before, because an old friend of her father's lived around here. She pointed toward a mountain, saying if they followed that path, they would arrive at his home. The big man asked who this person was, and if he was still alive. She said he was a bit odd, but he was a good person, or at least she hoped that he was. His house had extremely high walls and lots of computers and food, so he was likely still safe. The big man asked if that guy had a cyber cafe in his house, and our hero said that since he was a friend of her father, maybe her dad was with him too, so it might be a good idea for them to go and investigate. However, the horde of zombies was approaching from behind again. Yabai said he would clear a path, and they would follow right behind it. Meanwhile, the other large monster was also killing a bunch of zombies. He went up to one of them, and he said it seemed like enough, and jumped onto the building. The fire monster girl was hiding from the rain. He came in from outside and called out for Ruoxi. She was almost on the verge of passing away. He said he brought some more pearls, and she told him to hand them all over to her quickly. But the monster asked if she was certain she wanted to eat that. She told him to just hand it over and get the hell out of the room, man. The big monster got roasted like a complete fool. He respected the girl. The fire girl asked if she had consumed it, and he said she seemed to be hesitating. Her friends said she would hesitate as well, especially after seeing the state she ended up in after eating that. But the big monster said he just did not want her to die. The fire girl seemed to have cauterized her open wounds, but she knew that without any medical help, there was no way that she could possibly survive. And the other one understood that perhaps her only chance to survive was by ingesting that. The fire girl said it would be a good thing since she could mutate like them, and then they would have one more person to assist. They could kill whoever they wanted and take their revenge on everyone. But the big monster said there might be strong people like Yabai in this world. Besides, her arm was not growing back. The monster girl said it was strange. The guy's weapon seemed to be able to block even her flank. And the big, dark-skinned monster said the best thing would be to kidnap that guy and force him to reveal all the truths about the pearls. At that moment, she introduced herself as Jubo, and the big, dark-skinned monster introduced himself as Wang Sheng. Back with our friends, another creature was being taken down. Even in the pouring rain, he did not stop for a moment. However, our hero seemed to be growing tired. Zhao Heng quickly noticed this and said they needed to find a place to rest. Yabai told him not to worry about him and asked Yuyuer where they were. She pointed to a bridge and said that after they crossed it, they would go up the side of the mountain. The problem was that the tunnel was filled with water and seemed to be very deep. Our hero saw that everything appeared to be completely clogged. However, he quickly spotted a piece of wood and told Yuyuer to get on, and they would push her along. The three of them then started moving through the dark tunnel. However, Zhao Heng was completely terrified, asking if it was possible for there to be zombies underwater. Yabai didn't answer, and Yuyuer called out his name. The poor guy was just trying to keep himself awake. But suddenly he passed out cold, taking her small raft along with him. The poor guy plunged straight down into the murky water, back with the other monsters. They were realizing that the rain was not stopping. Wang Sheng decided to go back to the room and speak with Ruoxi. However, that's when he saw her emanating a purple energy. He asked her what had happened, and she started screaming, hitting him in the chest. Jubo came in and asked why they were yelling. Man, a black aura erupted throughout the entire house. And now we're in the past life of our dear Yabai. He was pulled out from the water, and Ruoxi asked where his mechanical group had been hiding. He was angry that he wouldn't answer and told her to go to hell. She then said he was arrogant and that he would pay the price for it. With that, he was forced back down into the water. Sometime later, he awoke back in the present in a small room there. Yuyuer was sleeping peacefully on his leg. She woke up still a bit dazed. She was excited that he had finally woken up. However, he wanted to know where he was. At that moment, the big guy came in, taunting him, saying he had finally come to. Yabai seemed annoyed that the big guy was still around them. He said that obviously it was him who had brought him to this place. Our boy asked how they'd gotten him up the slope in such heavy rain. At that point, a gray-haired man entered the room and said he wanted to know that too. How could a boy, a big guy, and a child survive on streets filled with zombies? Then Yuyuer got excited and called him Grandpa Jean. He explained that Zhao Heng had pulled our boy out of the water, but didn't know what to do. Luckily, he'd been observing everything on his camera and approached in his car to save everyone. Yabai asked if he had seen everything, and the old man said he saw him slicing through the zombies like they were just cucumbers. That weapon of his was truly incredible, and he wanted to know where he had acquired it. Our boy stood up and said he couldn't say where, and demanded that it be returned to him immediately. The poor guy threatened the old man, but collapsed to his knees from complete exhaustion. The old man then said that it seemed using that sword truly drained a person's energy. He apologized for not having introduced himself. He said his name was Zhang, and he could be called Professor Zhang. This was his lab, where he conducted his research on the zombie virus. Yabai seemed to recognize that name. Then he recalled that the first researcher to name the black energy metal pearls was this very man. To a futuristic mechanic such as him, this guy was a true genius. Our boy hesitantly asked if he was really Professor Jean. Embarrassed, the old man said that the title Professor was just something he liked to use because it sounded nice. He was captivated by the weapon that could save them all, and he begged for a chance to inspect it. Yabai reasoned if this was truly Professor Jean, the risk might be worth it. He crossed his arms and said, I have something far better for your research. It was a live, captive zombie downstairs. The old man displayed all the items on his table. His weapon was there, and the elder claimed he'd only analyzed it, nothing more than that. With this, our hero stood, and the old man was taken aback, saying he almost threw his back out, trying to move it. Our hero surveyed the room and declared the place was amazing. With a laboratory like this, he could forge even greater weapons. The old man asked if he had forged that weapon, and our hero confirmed it. At that very moment, the old man grew excited, wanted to watch him create another. However, our hero stated the method of its forging was a mystery. The old man grumbled, saying that was just unfair. Our hero simply said if he provided good meals for a few days, he might reconsider. And on the elder's monitor, he had already seen detailed information about the two of them. Man, there's never a single moment of peace in this hellscape. I almost feel bad for these undead creatures who are just stuck with soaked feet constantly. From within the stronghold, Yuyuer was monitoring the cameras when Zhang brought her coffee, saying that he was happy she was there. She said she was trying to do whatever she could to help, and Zhang praised her for watching out for other survivors. However, he warned her that sadly, there was still no sign of her missing father. She insisted her father and Professor Zhang were good men, so she was certain he was still all right. The old man then came near and asked if those two who arrived with her were truly good people. That student did not seem ordinary, knowing so much about advanced tech at such a young age. Not to mention, he had a coldness in his eyes he'd seen in killers before, and the large man appeared normal. But he was sure he was concealing some dark secrets. Just then, the big guy showed up and told the professor to stop speaking ill of him to others. In his opinion, the old man was the odd one for living alone in this massive fortress, with a helicopter landing pad on its roof, a fleet of cars, gasoline for years, and countless solar panels, not to mention the veritable mountains of food. The old man shouted, saying the big guy knew absolutely nothing. He had sensed for a long time that the end was coming, which is why he had been preparing for this day. He was here, in his home, eating and living without cost, and still had the audacity to speak badly of him. The old man also stated that his purpose in this place was to save the entirety of humanity. The two of them began to argue, and Yuyuer told him to stop. However, at that moment, the big guy was struck on the back of his neck. Our hero just told him not to make a move. He drew a small amount of his blood, and Zhao Hang wanted to know what that was for. He just turned and stated that the zombies' next mutation was going to begin very soon, so they did not have a lot of time left. An even greater catastrophe was about to unfold, so it was best for them all to get ready. The old man was shocked by the talk of a zombie mutation. Meanwhile, on the outside, those former friends were just watching the zombies, man. I had nearly forgotten those guys even existed. He knelt down and told everyone this area was surrounded, so they were completely unable to get out. One of them said that the rain was heavy and the path was blocked. He had no idea what to do, and his friend had collapsed on the ground. The blonde guy said he sadly didn't know where Yebai had gone. There was no food here, so they were all going to perish. However, the blonde said there was still one option. He produced some pearls and showed them to the group. The others recalled this was what they had retrieved from the heads. The blonde said that out of simple curiosity, he had kept a few of them in secret, and he remembered the creatures that attacked them had said they consumed these. One of his friends asked if he was truly considering eating that strange pill, and then one of them cut in and asked what that was. Pointing off to the side, from the top of another building, a strange purple smoke was ascending. The blonde wondered why there was a tornado in this area. Meanwhile, back inside Zhao Hang's house, our post-apocalyptic mechanic was deep in his work. Zhao Hang noted that he had been there for a few days and had no idea why he was so incredibly focused. Zhang quickly said that he was likely creating new equipment to battle the zombies, and maybe many of them would turn out, just like that black spine creature. The other one made a fire. Zhao Hang said that if that occurred, everyone in here would perish after all. He didn't seem to possess any weapons in this place. The old man clarified he only wished to build a safe shelter, not a war zone. Why would he ever need weapons? But suddenly, Yuyuer came running and called out for them. She said she spotted her father on one of the cameras. The three of them immediately rushed out, and he asked where she had seen him. She sat at the console and said she saw him at the east gate. She had even saved the footage and told him to have a look. On one of the camera feeds, you could see her father covered in zombie viscera, blending in with the horde. The old man said that from his own movements, it did not look like he had become a zombie. Meanwhile, her father used the situation to run away in his disguise. The big guy said It was incredible how her father had survived like that, and the old man realized that if the zombies did not attack him due to the smell, perhaps it was something that was worth investigating. Then Yuyuer asked what they were all going to do, and Zhang seemed to be hesitant. He stated that the weather was truly terrible right now, and Yuyuer did not seem to want to leave. Zhang told her go and ask Yabai personally, because maybe he had created something amazing. But the scene cuts to him saying no, he still had not yet finished. So there was no reason for her to try and rush him. And he told her not to disturb him outside of when they brought food. The big guy said he was already taking it too far and should at least attempt to comfort her a little bit. Our boy then asked why the big guy didn't go and save her father himself. He was a bit confused by that question. But then he saw that our boy had apparently made him a gun and a new blade. Ibai explained he had put his own blood on them so he could use them. The big guy was hesitant, but managed to lift them much more easily than he had before. Ibai explained that these types of weapons with crystals could read his own thoughts. However, just like how he controlled those other light blades, he should be cautious or he could deplete his energy. Zhao Hang got excited, saying he had written it all down. Then he asked about the firearm he had picked up, and our boy confirmed it. He explained that to shoot it, you first had to allow the gun to generate its energy. The bullets were powerful, but you had to be careful because you couldn't fire too many shots. Zhao Hang got excited, saying this thing looked like a laser weapon. He ran outside, saying he could not wait to test it all out. He ran out of the base and into the rain, aimed it upwards, and shot a laser beam into the sky. He immediately began shouting that it was simply incredible. He prepared the blade and made a single cut, saying that now he possessed the same power as Ibai. The old man was furious at the big guy for experimenting with all of it. Zhao Hang was thrilled, saying he was now completely invincible. He put on his boots and his raincoat, saying that no matter what kind of zombie came, he could now take them all down. He looked at the camera and told Yuyuer not to worry, that he would bring her father back to her in one piece. She was a bit worried and asked if he could really do that. The old man said that for right now, they could only watch to see how long he would remain so confident. He was wearing a headset, getting his directions, and the old man explained that he had to go through the east. Unfortunately, that was the path towards the mountain where there were no cameras, so he had to be extremely careful. Zhao Hang told the old man to shut up, saying he could handle it. He followed along the path, and soon got excited when he saw a group of zombies coming his way. The creatures advanced, and he smiled, saying it was time to test out his friend's new gift. He unleashed the now famous green crescent slash, cutting every one of them in half. He started shouting that he was too strong now and afraid of no one. However, that is when he noticed something off to the side. Another person had witnessed that strange purple tornado. He dispatched a few more zombies and asked if the people in the room had seen it as well. The rain seemed to be getting even stronger, and a purple tornado was now forming on the eastern side. The old man said the camera could not see it, but the detectors were showing wind speeds that were close to level 6. It was very hazardous to remain outside, so he should return to the house right away. Zhao Hang apologized to Yuyuer and said that unfortunately he could not win against the power of the very gods. The old man, Zhang, told Yuyuer to stay calm, assuring her that her father would definitely find a place to protect himself from the storm. Zhao Hang then approached the main gate. Suddenly, the alarm began to blare loudly, and the old man got scared, going to see what had happened. He then told everyone to calm themselves, saying he had only brought a single zombie, because it seemed Yabai had asked him to bring one back. Excited to see the zombie was still alive, he said to wait a moment, and then ran off, saying he would be back in just a second. The old man, just as excited, noted that it was, in fact, still alive. Alive is a strong word for that particular creature. The old man praised the big guy, who got all excited, and Yuyuer was happy to see that. They seemed to be getting along a bit better. Meanwhile, Ibai was in his production phase, man. The boy had already finished all the mechanics for the new arm. The rain poured on for quite some time, until at long last, the sun began to break through in this cursed apocalypse. As usual, the zombies went completely crazy when they saw the sun, man. They went so wild that they all began to transform. From out of nowhere, the creatures turned red and began leaping onto the buildings. There was a poor little girl, all happy that the sun had finally come out, until one of the large ones showed up, and the creature was now face to face with her. Her father heard a loud scream and immediately went to see what had happened. The entire family became its next meal. Now the zombies had truly evolved, jumping and invading everyone's homes. There was no longer a single safe haven in that building. The schoolmates of our hero were fleeing in complete desperation. One of them was about to be captured, but the zombie got hit on the back of the neck, man. Someone struck another one in the head. The blonde appeared. He pulled out the pearl and looked at his friends. They immediately recognized Fong, the blonde who had been considering eating the pearl. The scene then cuts to the street, where a group of zombies were running. They were all lined up, and at the top of the building was dear Ruoxi, with her two zombies standing by her side. Jubo remarked that it was amazing how they were moving so orderly. Ruoxi laughed. She said she had been suffering for many days, and wanted to know if they had found Ibai's location. Wang Sheng said he was in a house on the mountain that looked like a research facility, and it would be easy to get inside and kill him. Ruoxi, however, said that would not be any fun. She wanted to make sure he knew exactly who was behind his death. And before that, she wanted him to feel the despair closing in. Back at the house, Zhao Hang and Yuer were about to depart, but then they heard an alarm, and Zhao Hang asked what that sound was. The old man told them not to go out, because something very large was approaching. And strangely, a horde of zombies was gathering in the city. The weirdest part was that they seemed to be coming right for them. Zhao Hang, scared, asked how many there were. The old man said there were at least 1,000. The big guy was very confused and asked if they were the only humans alive in this place. The old man replied that he had no idea, but it would be best to inform Ibai about this. The big guy ran off and hammered on the door, calling out to our hero, saying that over 1,000 zombies were coming. Our boy said the professor had already informed him. The big guy, excited, asked if he was ready to kill them all. Our boy replied that he was not prepared at all, scared. The big guy then asked how he was going to deal with these creatures. Ibai said he had told them to hurry up and start learning how to handle these situations. He still had not finished his own research, and if this guy was the real Professor Zhang, he knew that the two of them together could solve this. The big guy said none of what he was saying made any sense, but Ibai stayed quiet and continued his work. With that, the big guy departed, saying that in the end, he could only rely on himself. He climbed a large tower, and when he looked down, he was completely shocked. The horde was already at their gates. He already knew that. Even the walls of this lab would not withstand a group this large. He ran to the car, saying he could not let them gather around. The old man was scared, wondering what he was planning to do. The big guy said to open the gate because he had a new strategy, and if it did not work, everyone had better flee from this place. Yuyuke screamed, but the next second, he was already out there. He passed in front of the zombies, pulled out his gun, and fired the laser. With that one shot, he wiped out the first group. He was excited because there were so many creatures. He didn't even have to aim with any precision. He kept on shooting and blowing everyone up. But from a distance, Ruoxi was watching all of this. That damn girl is a true villain, but she's very dangerous. Wang Sheng was on top of the tower, impressed with the weapon that Zhao Hang was using. However, Ruoxi just wanted to see how long they would last. Zhao Hang kept shooting and blowing up the zombies. The issue was that no matter how many he killed, the number of them did not seem to be shrinking. Then suddenly, a fireball struck right under the car's tire. At that moment, Yuer and the old man screamed, and man, the car nearly flipped completely over. Zhao Hang had to get out through the side door. But standing right before him was the fire zombie. He got angry that this damn girl had launched such a sneak attack. He fired a shot at her, saying he was no longer afraid. However, she dodged it and launched another fireball. Zhao Hang dodged as well, pulling off a mid-air matrix move and fired a single bullet. The creature fled, and he called her a coward, telling her to come back. The problem was that now he was surrounded by zombies. He fired off a few more shots, and Grandpa Zhang told him to come back immediately, because it was impossible for him to make it out alive. Zhao Hang started to run, realizing that he had fallen into a clever trap. But here came Wang Sheng from high above. There was no way for Zhao Hang to get away. But man, this big guy was fast, dodging yet again. He fell to the ground on his side and nearly landed a shot. He pulled out the blade and nearly landed a slash as well. Impressive. He was fighting face to face with Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng wondered how this big guy seemed even more agile than Ibai. He extended his weapon and told Zhao Hang to die. But the creature ran off, man. This bald, big guy made every one of them flee. Meanwhile, Ruoxi was watching from atop the tower. Here she comes, up to no good. At that moment, the zombies that had been standing still began running towards him. Zhao Hang was confused as to why they suddenly moved so differently, but he still had the sword that Yi Bai had created. and he unleashed the green crescent slash. The problem was that they were coming so incredibly fast. He couldn't kill them in time, and he started trying to run. What's this? Zombies were even being thrown at him now. The poor guy wondered why these creatures were raining down on him, and the monsters kept on falling beside him. Obviously, it was Wang Sheng practicing his zombie throwing skills. He grabbed another one and threw it at Zhao Hang. Zhao Hang had to use one of his gun's bullets to blow it up midair. He kept on running, but was now begging to be safe. At that moment, one of the thrown zombies landed and grabbed his leg in a tight hug. Man, it came in for a nasty bite. Luckily, Zhao Hang managed to slash it. The problem was that he had fallen to the ground now. There was no more time to get up, so his only chance now was to land shot. But then, a green light appeared. Energy waves swept through everything in front of him. A second cannon shot passed right by. Wang Sheng and the other one looked, trying to figure out what was happening ahead of the zombie horde. There were bright flashes of light rising up. Another barrage passed by, and then came a massive punch, like something straight out of Transformers. What is this, man? Our boy turned himself into Optimus Prime. The kid had built his own claws and legs. He was fully equipped. Wang Sheng got all excited, saying he had finally arrived. The old man celebrated, saying the boy was truly amazing. The big guy was impressed by all the armor our boy had constructed over the past few days. But Yi Bai told him to focus because the enemy was very near. He ordered him to go back and kill the zombies on the right side. Meanwhile, he would handle the ones on the left until the main creatures finally showed up. Wang Sheng said that with him here, he was confident that they could win this. Immediately, he went back to blasting the creatures. Yi Bai looked around and even activated a booster on his robot. The kid took off into the air, activated his giant Optimus Prime hand, and smashed everything, man. This kid had become incredibly strong. The big guy was impressed, saying he had gotten just a bit too powerful. At least after killing so many zombies, they were sure they would have plenty of pearls to produce more weapons. Excited, he went back to finishing off more of the zombies. That damned Roxy was still watching from far away. Wang Sheng, scared, said that with this new power, there was no way they could get anywhere near. She got quite angry, saying the damn boy thought he was safe just because of that new armor. Obviously, she was not going to let that slide. Another punch smashed into the zombies, crushing more of them. The laser fired forward as the old man watched on the screen. He was impressed, saying that the boy's exoskeleton was something that should not even exist. In this new era, he could not even imagine how he had used all those scraps of metal he had abandoned to create something like this. That is when you were revealed that what he was using was a metal that came from inside the zombies' heads. The old man was shocked by this revelation. Now, it was completely clear why. Yi Bai had been concealing this information from him for so long. He ran off, saying he was going to mess with that zombie they had brought in to study. Meanwhile, on the outside, Wang Sheng was giving his orders to the zombies again. Once more, he was sending them all to finish off Yi Bai. The entire ground began to tremble violently, and the big guy said it felt like a strong earthquake. Yi Bai told him to stop thinking and just keep on killing. But then he noticed that the zombies were strangely starting to leap towards him. As soon as they got close, Ruoxi clenched her hand tight, and the creatures exploded right in front of him. Yi Bai had no idea what was even happening. Ruoxi celebrated, saying that soon he would finally die. She kept sending waves of creatures and making them explode in front of him. Yi Bai could not remember the creatures being able to self-destruct in his past life. Meanwhile, Wang Sheng watched everything from his side. Zhu Bo remarked that this battle looked like a fight between two gods, and there was no way that they could get involved. He then revealed that Ruoxi had eaten 7 pearls to become this way. Her body kept melting and then reforming, showing just how much she truly hated Yi Bai. Zhu Bo asked if eating more pearls made things better, since instead of turning into a monster, she just gained new powers. But Wang Sheng said, seeing how much she had suffered, he was not keen on testing that out himself. Meanwhile, Ruoxi kept sending zombies to explode in front of Yi Bai. He had already realized that someone was controlling them. He turned, defended himself from an attack, and fired a blast at the tower man. The boy had perfect aim, and Ruoxi was forced to dodge it. Wang Sheng yelled out for her, and like a fool, she nearly fell. But she managed to float in the air. Then she got startled. Yi Bai was already right in front of her. With Optimus Prime's gigantic hand, he blasted another shot, and she pulled zombies to shield herself, man. And she made a barrier out of creatures. But I think they're all about to get swept away. She kept commanding, but at that moment, he leaped over and went in for a punch. She barely dodged, moving to the side, and Yabai opened his giant hand once again. She went in for the 1v1 and activated hers as well. But man, he took a direct hit to the mouth. The poor girl got launched very far away, and before she could even react, she was pinned down to the ground. Optimus Prime 1, Waifu 0. Yabai remarked that to have survived those bullets, she must have consumed all the pearls, and he asked her how many she had eaten. She did not seem to respond and activated her power in her hand. But then came the stomping blow, man. It is better if you do not try anything else, warrior. She began screaming in pure agony. But he said that in their previous life, she had also made him lose his own arm. And today was the day that she would pay for it. But then he heard a strange sound nearby. Wang Sheng came running desperately, shouting at him to let her go. But Yabai just opened his giant hand and fired a single shot. The monster managed to dodge and began to circle him. He took advantage of the opening and jumped right over. But our boy did not hesitate and struck Wang Sheng's arm with one hand, holding Ruoxi with his other hand. He activated the laser and hit him right in the chest, man. Bad luck for the fool, who was thrown very far away. Seeing Wang Sheng defeated and Ruoxi so easily captured, Jubo knew that she had absolutely no chance. Perhaps her best option was to flee from this place. The poor girl was still crushed underneath the giant robot. Our boy remarked that it was crazy how she seemed to be one of the chosen few, since she had consumed pearls and still kept a human form. However, he knew how truly dangerous she was, so to avoid any future problems, he was going to finish her off right now. But just as he was about to crush her, the zombies all began to transform. Yabai was shocked and wondered why they had already reached rank 1. Yuyuer reported that more and more zombies were surrounding the lab. Zhao Heng was holding the line, but some had already broken through and were climbing up the walls. Ruoxi started to laugh. She said they were all going to die and become her zombie slaves. Tired of it, Yabai threw her far away and she crashed into the zombies. He prepared his giant hand and unleashed a double laser. He clearly fled, thinking that she was dead. But you know how these stories go. She's probably still alive, right? Meanwhile, the big guy was panicking because his gun ran out of ammo. He only had the large sword left, but he was completely surrounded on all sides. And right at that moment, a rank 1 zombie jumped at him. He barely reacted in time and defended himself with the sword. He wondered if this was a new ability user. He slashed right down the middle of the creature, but instead of slicing it cleanly, it only left a small scratch. He was terrified. He looked back, and all the creatures were starting to transform. The entire base was completely surrounded by zombies, and more of them kept coming. Zhao Heng slashed at one of the creature's chests and started running. He had no idea what kind of monster this was, because the sword was not working anymore. Maybe these were the rank 1 mutants Yabai had mentioned. Yuyuer kept calling for Zhao Heng and asking if he was okay. At the same time, some creatures had jumped over the barrier and were approaching the main research area. But Zhang was focused on his research and did not care about what was happening outside. Zhao was trying to escape, but could not locate Yabai and had no idea how to get back inside the base. Then Optimus Prime showed up and grabbed the big guy. Zhao was overjoyed and asked if now their boy could fly. He replied that it was just a jump with some light gliding, and ordered him to go kill the creatures approaching the lab. Now, to kill these rank 1 creatures, it would take more than one single slash. But you should be careful, because these creatures were much more agile than before. The big guy collapsed on the ground, exhausted, saying he could finally breathe for a little bit. At that moment, Yabai leaped to the top of the gate, prepared the Optimus hand, and began evaporating everything in sight. The problem was that while he was clearing out one side, the creatures were invading from the other. The big guy was exhausted, calling out to Yuyuer, saying he was thirsty. He then heard something nearby and saw a creature approaching. It was getting close when he managed to grab the blade and stab it in the chest, man. He threw the first one to the ground and ripped it in half. This kid does not stop, and he hit it again. Then Yuyuer appeared, saying she brought the water he asked for. She asked him if Zhao Heng was all right, and upon getting a bit closer, remarked that this zombie was different from the others. Inside the creatures, he found a red pearl. Meanwhile, Professor Zhang finally found what they had been speaking about. Even though the stone was quite dull, you could see a strange green light deep within. The question now remains whether humans become mutants because of this strange metal, or if the metal forms when they turn into zombies. It was a year to uncover all the secrets of that new material. Meanwhile, outside, our boy was cleaning up the entire place. He killed one here, smashed 2 more over there, A swipe of his hand, and he finally said it was over. He shouted from outside, telling the big guy to collect the pearls, because he had cleared out everything. Zhao Hang gave a thumbs up, saying he was really quite efficient. Upon seeing the huge pile of dead monsters, the big guy complained that it would take forever to gather them all. He then turned to Yi Bai, saying that if he helped him gather them, he also wanted a mecha for himself. Our boy said he would think about it later because now he needed to sleep. But then the old man came over to speak with him. He said it was time for Yi Bai to reveal all of his secrets about that strange pearl. Meanwhile, outside, the big guy started his digging. There were so many of the creatures, and the most annoying thing was having to do it all by himself. Back at the base, Grandpa Zhang was fascinated by the rare metal. Yi Bai explained that this strange pearl starts forming in the brain as soon as a person becomes a zombie. The longer it is exposed to light, the more energy the item accumulates. It was as if the zombies themselves could perform a strange kind of photosynthesis. The old man said it was interesting to know that's how it worked, but after analyzing it, he had not found anything to match what Yabai described. However, he did notice that inside of this item, there were some active metal molecules that seemed to react to both light and heat. Additionally, it was extremely resistant and had an affinity for both metal and for blood. Yabai confirmed, saying it had a special affinity for human blood. That is why the virus spreads much faster in humans than in any other living species, and the absorption of light makes them continue to mutate after a certain amount of time. The old man said that now it made sense why during the day these zombies would just stand in the middle of the street, staring at the sun. However, today they were strangely running around like a bunch of lunatics. Yabai explained it was because they were being controlled by an ability user. The old man asked if he was talking about the spike creature, or the one that used fire and threw out flames. Yabai explained that those two were just normal mutants. A mutant from his own class, named Roxy. The old professor was completely stunned, realizing this single object caused such chaos in the human body. Yabai admitted they had studied it for a time, and the only truth he knew was if you consumed the item, you would awaken a terrifying mutation. These ability users had always been a plague, which is why they had to be purged the moment they appeared. The old man was still reeling from the item, the mutations, and now different rankings of zombies. He told our hero he was certain no school taught any of this, so from where had he learned it? Yabai just said that perhaps the future would tell him, but would be more rewarding if the old man discovered it through his own experiments. The professor then said he wished to inspect the new weapons Yabai had forged. Yabai, completely drained, said it was fine so long as he didn't dismantle the mecha, because he was going to need it again. The old man left, excited, while Yabai said he was going to rest, because he was completely and utterly spent. Yiyuer just watched on. She wanted to ask our hero for aid in finding her father. However, she knew he had fought all day and must be truly exhausted. So she put a small blanket over him and sat down beside him, thinking about how deeply she missed her father. The sun was already beginning to set outside. The big guy was so tired, he couldn't even move an inch. He thought it would be amazing to possess a tool that could easily extract these pearls. What he didn't realize was a creature watched him. It was Jubo, convinced that everything was now over. Since thousands of zombies had been slain in a single day, she was certain that Wang Shang and Ruoxi had been killed, so she was contemplating whether she should surrender. The problem was, she knew she would be slain without mercy, because she was now a monster. The bigger issue was that these new rank 2 zombies appear to be attacking even creatures just like her. She expended the last of her energy to summon flames and incinerate those monsters. If more creatures like that appeared, or if more began mutating, things would not be easy for her at all. The only solution she could see was to eat more pearls and try to get stronger. But suddenly she froze and saw the albino on top of a tree. That mysterious Fong was just staring down at her. She was just about to speak, but he extended his hand and leaped in another direction. He fled, and it seemed as though she might have followed him. Meanwhile, back at the stronghold, Yiyuer was asleep. The big guy was lying right next to her, drained after gathering everything. Yiyuer awoke in the dead of night and saw that Yabai had already risen. As always, our apocalyptic mechanic was back in the workshop with his welding torch in hand. He was at it yet again. The sun rose, and we were back at that old convenience store. From the beginning, Yiyuer's father slowly drew near. He entered the shop, searching for her, but everything was in complete ruins. On one of the tables, He found a note she had left, saying she was going to find it. The problem was, now he had no idea where she could be. Outside, the place was completely filled with zombies. As usual, they stood motionless with glowing eyes, staring at the sun. Back at the base, a spiky Batmobile had been created, armored and with 4 giant wheels. Obviously, the one who was going to drive it already had a huge smile on his face. This yabai is something else entirely. The boy built an entire car in a single night. The big guy, excited, asked if it was made of a rare material and if it could transform into a mecha. Our boy said it was just a regular car, but he needed to know it had 2,000 pearls and 12 rank 1 zombie pearls. The big guy agreed it suited him just perfectly and asked when they were going to go and test it out. He was eager to leave and find Yuyuer's father, but at that moment, she asked them both to wait. She said that this time, she wanted to go with them. However, Yabai said that outside was full of rank 1 zombies, and she would die if she went. She said she had been following all of their orders, but this time, she wanted to personally find her own father. Our hero told her to stop being so stubborn, or he would ask the professor to lock her up in the lab. The poor girl started to cry, calling out for her father. The big guy scolded our hero, asking him why he made Yuyuer cry. Suddenly, Professor Zhang appeared and told her to calm down a bit. He showed her a new drone, saying that he had fixed it. It was his first invention using that rare material. Not only could it now carry much more energy and last a lot longer, but communication and stability had also improved. This way, she could stay safely at the base, while still helping to find her father. Ibai praised the old man, saying he had quickly learned how to use the item. The old man laughed, saying he wasn't a real professor, but at least he was able to make something like this. Our boy then prepared the car and told the big guy it was time to go. Excited, Zhao Heng couldn't wait to fire up the rhino. Yuyuer asked them to be careful, and the big guy floored. The Batmobile shot out of the base and tore through the forest. He was impressed that any terrain felt like smooth asphalt. Then they hit the road, driving through all the other cars, excited that his new car made the others look like tofu. A while later, Yebai said they had spotted her father in this area. They kept driving through the city, but the big guy commented that it was very strange. There were no zombies around. That's when one of them smiled, and a bunch of zombies were on the rooftops. The next second, they were all over the car, pounding on the metal. The big creatures were trying to break everything, but nothing was happening. One of them came to the windshield, and the big guy told the creature to stop blocking his view. He turned to Yebai and asked if the car had any weapons. Our boy said gunpowder was now useless, so he had prepared something much better. As soon as he pressed a single button, the entire car became enveloped in green electricity. The lightning struck the zombies, and man, they evaporated in an instant. I was as shocked as the big guy. Zhao Heng's jaw dropped in amazement. The protagonist then said if there were so many rank 1s here, no one could be alive, so they should change their direction. They took another path, but from the top of a building, someone was watching them. The person smiled, saying it looked quite interesting. They approached what looked like a large shopping mall, and the big guy said that was where they had seen her father on the cameras. Our boy said to release the drone, and told Yuyuer to start searching for him. Then she began to fly the drone, checking each and every one of the rooms. The big guy asked what they should do in the meantime. Our boy said if he wanted to check out the lower floors, he could, but for now he was going back to sleep. The big guy said he felt much safer inside the vehicle, so maybe a good idea would be driving around and honking the horn. They kept driving down the road, and Yuyuer said she saw some zombies approaching them. The big guy got scared for a moment, but then got excited to test out the new weapons. He pressed a button, and spikes popped out of tires. With that, he drove toward the creatures and sliced through everything. Another button fired a laser, evaporating half the street. Yuyuer asked him to be careful, reminding him that her father could be in one of those houses. He pressed the next button, hoping it wasn't too destructive. In front of the car, a meat grinder appeared. He drove over the first creatures, and the system informed him he had obtained another pearl. The big guy's dream of having a collection tool had come true, and he wanted to give Yabai a hug. The car started swerving all over the road, and Yuyuer was confused about what was happening inside. The big guy had hit his head 5 different times. But at that moment, Yuyuer screamed, saying she had found her father's car. It was about 500 meters away, and she was sending the images. Zhao Heng told her not to worry, that he would find her father. However, she mentioned that the car was broken and the windshield was damaged. She was worried something had happened to her father when he came to get those supplies. Yabai told her to check the drone to see if he had left a message, because he probably was not too far away. Yuyuer was still worried, wanting to know where her father was. Suddenly, she started to faint and slammed her face on the keyboard. Immediately, The old man rushed toward her, not understanding what was happening. Back with Zhao Heng, some time later, he stopped the car. Yabai asked the professor how Yuyuer was doing. He explained that she had fainted, and it seemed her illness was progressing. Apparently, she had been so focused on helping find her father that she forgot to take her own medication. Fortunately, the professor had some stored away. However, treating this illness was not his specialty, and finding a doctor in this apocalypse would be even more difficult. He told Yabai to go to the hospital to get some medicine, and he would do his best to keep her alive. At that moment, the big guy came back and said he hadn't found any message or information inside the car. What was strange was that her father had left a lot of supplies behind. So after the crash, he must have run off in a great panic. Additionally, the big guy found something quite odd. There were black boxes with no logos or any descriptions, and they seemed to contain some strange-looking pills. The protagonist said they might be some kind of medicine, so they would take them back to Zhang to check. With that, they started the car and headed toward the hospital. The professor said that for now, he would keep a close eye on Yuyuer, so he wouldn't be able to help them out with the drones. Back in the car, the big guy was sad to learn that Yuyuer had leukemia. Now he understood why Yabai had not allowed her to come with them. He talked about finding the medicine, but Yabai told him to shut up and just drive them to the hospital. Yabai knew that in 2 years, all the supplies in the city would be gone, and this place would become an abandoned, desolate wasteland. And the worst part was that at the current rate, it was happening faster than he had ever expected. Maybe in the end, he would not be able to change anything. Perhaps it was better to consider a very different option than letting her live on in this miserable world. The scene shifted to someone injecting a liquid into Jubo's arm, which immediately started to regenerate. She was confused as to how that was even possible. Even her flames had now returned. The blonde in the hat said it was impressive that she was a fire user. Jubo thanked him and asked which organization he said he was from. The blonde opened his arms and said they specialize in gathering people with unique abilities. Their goal was to create a paradise for those chosen in this world. Jubo, confused, asked if the blonde was also a user. He said yes, and that there were many others just like him. She asked if it was possible to maintain a human appearance like his. He said yes, that his group possessed the solution. They could live on in this new world. Meanwhile, in front of the hospital, the big guy was standing at the main door. In front of him, he saw graffiti saying that this was private territory and to stay out. He told our boy that the place was occupied by other people. So what were they going to do? Yabai simply replied in Optimus Prime mode that since it was a strategic position, it was to be expected that this would happen. But he ignored everything and smashed his way right in. The big guy thought it was strange how quiet the place was. He kept seeing messages telling them to turn back or they would die. But Yabai just told them to search different areas and communicate through their headphones. As they walked, the big guy said this was the second place he hated most in the world. He hated the smell of disinfectant, but he started sniffing the air. Obviously, in this apocalypse, no one was using disinfectant, right? But the strangest thing was that he smelled a sweet fruit. Suddenly, he began to faint and collapse down to the floor. Yabai immediately called out, asking what had just happened. He was not responding, and our boy found it highly suspicious, and something started coming out of the ceiling. Yabai smelled it and immediately suspected it was some kind of poison. But Optimus Prime was equipped, and he put on a mask. He activated his giant hand and blasted the air duct. He warned the big guy that the place was a trap and told him to get out, but someone appeared next to him. Man, our boy didn't hesitate and went in for a punch at the doctor. But strangely, he stopped just before hitting her. She touched the robot and said his mecha was really cool. She then remarked that it must have been created using zombie pearls, and that she wanted to meet the person who had made it. Yabai was not sure if she was an ability user, and simply asked her who she was. The girl introduced herself as Tang Tang and said she was a sweet genius doctor. Yabai, however, asked why the poison and whether she had consumed any of the pearls. She said she released the poison to anesthetize the invaders, but was curious about this whole pearl eating thing. Yabai told her to forget about that and asked if she was the only one here. She said she was the only princess of this castle and asked if the Demon King was trying to capture her. Yabai, exhausted from all this, asked if she was not afraid of death. The crazy girl said death was as charming as candy to her, and if she died for what she loved the most, she would have no regrets. Yabai wondered if she was insane. He then asked what she meant by being a genius and what she was specialized in. She said she was a doctor specializing in viruses. Now Yabai was very interested. He immediately wanted to know what she had discovered about the pearls, and if she used them to create those poisons. However, she did not want to be asked so many questions, and told him he was being very annoying. She said he kept on asking, but never answered anything. So if he wanted to know something, he would have to tell her who created that mecha. Our boy hesitated for a second, and he said they had a research institute, and that if she wanted, he could take her there. The girl got all excited. However, she warned that she had one more request, and he would have to agree to it. The scene shifted to a barren desert, where a car was parked in the middle of the road. Zhao Heng called out for someone named Ha-Jin and asked where she was. The girl responded, saying she hated people who broke their promises, and asked if someone named Xiao Kai had arrived. The guy on the motorcycle, who must have been Xiao Kai, said that after this mission, they would go back and get married. Someone told them to stop flirting in the middle of a mission. A truck started approaching. The three of them, excited, said that just like Xiao had said, they would follow the plan. The truck passed in front of the car, and they waited for the signal. However, the big guy asked Xiao Kai where the hell the signal was. Poor Ha-Jin had been hit by the truck. Meanwhile, Xiao Kai was trying to escape, saying that things were getting very weird. Another car pulled up behind the big guys. That's when he realized their plan had been exposed to someone. The big guy woke up, and all of that had been a dream, because he had passed out from the girl's poison. He saw the doctor in front of him with a smug look on her face, and Ibai asked if he had slept enough. He was a bit confused, and the crazy girl was giggling. She informed him that he had been hit with a special poison she created that put people to sleep for 3 hours straight. And the interesting part was that if she hadn't administered the cure, his body would have turned into a pool of blood. Yabai just told them to stop chatting and start loading all those items into the vehicle. Tang Tang politely asked Zhao Heng for his help, but he was not too eager. And she changed her expression and told him he had better listen, or he would end up in one of those jars. The poor guy quickly grabbed the jars and got moving. She thanked him, saying they were true gentlemen. Meanwhile, Ibai wanted to know who she really was. He remembered this sweet poison from his past. Life, one of the main ways to fight zombies in the future, was with this kind of terrifying gas. If this girl was one of the first to create such an item, it would be worth having her on the team and helping her develop it. At the very least, you could not let someone like her fall into the hands of another gang. A while later, everything was loaded. The car held way more than it seemed. She said it was very cute, and that it looked like it had also been made using pearls. She remarked that it was perfect for a princess like her. The big guy asked our boy if it was really okay to bring along someone this crazy. Yabai replied that they needed her research on the medicines and her help with the trip. But then he heard a noise. A transformed creature appeared on top of a building. It was a chimera-like lion with many eyes, and everyone was terrified. Man, when the creature saw the three of them, it started to drool. It let out a roar, and the big guy asked if it was another ability user or some kind of zombie. But Yabai just told them to stop wasting time outside and get into the vehicle. The creature leaped at them, and our boy activated Optimus Prime. He landed a solid hit on the creature's arm, sending it crashing down to the ground. While the big guy started the car, Ibai managed to hold the creature with his arms. He told them to take the doctor back to the base, while he dealt with the monster. Then he landed a punch to the back of its neck. He hit it with another laser. And from inside, the big guy was wondering why this one was so much bigger than the others. Tang Tang explained that this big dog had been circling the hospital for a very long time, which was why no one ever came near it. Zhao Heng asked why she hadn't mentioned a monster like that. She looked confused, saying that since they came from outside, she thought it was already handled. As she approached, she said that with all the advanced equipment they had, it shouldn't be a problem. After all, they were humanity's last hope for survival. The big guy told her to stop joking, but she insisted she was not lying. She had researched the zombie virus, and the people who hadn't transformed were definitely the chosen ones. Outside, Yabai kept fighting the creature, landing another punch once again. The timing of things compared to his past life did not make any sense. These mutants weren't natural animals that had evolved just because of the zombie virus. They were a mix of the virus and a lot of advanced engineering, something that shouldn't exist at this point in time. The creature shot a beam, and he barely dodged it. He smiled, saying he was finally starting to understand what was happening. He fired another shot with Optimus Prime, hitting the creature in the neck. But the shot deflected and hit the building. Yabai realized that the creature was still able to reflect his attacks. The beast charged at him and swiped with its claws, but he dodged to the side. It grabbed one of the buses and started wrapping around. With that, Ibai told her to stop being so disobedient, and he tore 2 pieces from her back. The monstrous creature collapsed down to the ground, exhausted she fired another beam, but Ibai easily blocked it with his hand. He said that her movements were now useless, and it was his turn. He launched himself at her with the robot, charging forward with a single strike. He kept her square on the head and started smashing her into the ground. Man, the boy was truly brutal. When he finished off the monster, among the remains, he found a massive pearl. Our boy examined it in his hand and said that once he transplanted something like this, things would get much easier than before. Meanwhile, the blonde guy on top of the building was watching and said, "This is going to give him quite a..." Ibai called the big guy, asking if they could hear him. Unfortunately, they were already too far, and the signal was not working anymore. It was time for him to head back, so he started flying with the Optimus. As he passed by the buildings, he glanced to the side and saw the blonde guy. The blonde waved and said it was a pleasure to meet him, man. Ibai immediately stretched out his hand and blew him up. Right in front of him, the blonde appeared on another building and asked if Ibai had some kind of prejudice against ability users. Ibai didn't hesitate and sent another explosion his way. But the blonde said he was not interested in fighting it. He teleported onto the robot's arm and said he was just there to deliver a message and wouldn't take long. Yabai crushed him with his hand. The blonde said if he wanted to chat in that position, it was fine with him. He then introduced himself as Songbin and invited Yabai to visit him in the northern district. Yabai continued crushing him, while the doctor said he was interested in calling the medical girl. However, when he looked at his hand, the guy had disappeared. It seemed he had some sort of body substitution ability. The threat was not huge, but it was extremely difficult to deal with something like that. And the strangest part was that the damned secret organization was already forming. Ibai didn't want to think about it, but he had to prepare for the absolute worst. Interestingly, the name of this secret organization was actually Secret Organization. These guys were not too creative, but Ibai knew that in 50 years, it would control most of the resources and the awakening. The organization's goal was to create a world dominated by ability users. That mutant beast was probably created by them, and they had likely been watching him for some time. It did make sense for this organization to already exist, which meant they probably had someone from the future as well. The Batmobile arrived at the base. Tang said it was a pretty normal place to have created that metro car. The big guy remarked that she had some guts, coming to a place she knew nothing about. But she said she trusted her own intuition. She then asked Zhao Hang to hurry up and take out the experiments, saying she was doing it for Yuyuer. The old man appeared and said it seemed they had found a Dr. Tang. Tang immediately approached and asked if he was the professor who created the mecha and the vehicle. Before he could say anything, she said she already knew that it was him and that she was especially here to listen to him. The doctor commented that he dressed quite sloppily, but was clearly a mad scientist. Grandpa Zhang was very confused, wondering where Yabai had found this crazy girl. However, he did recognize the name Professor Tang and knew she was a young genius with a PhD in viruses. She said she was honored and was clearly flustered. Meanwhile, the old man wondered how a girl like her had survived, but she just had to cut the small talk, adding that she was there to research the pearls with him. He was impressed that she had one of the pearls and praised her, saying it was amazing that she had created the mecha in the car. She called it Black Gold and asked if he had come up with that name. Now, Grandpa Zhang wasn't sure if he should reveal that. He wasn't the one who had created any of it, especially since it seemed she knew less than he did. And as far as he knew, Yabai wanted to keep it secret. He then spread his arms and told her they could work together because he had made some new discoveries. However, first she needed to help him with something else. The scene shifted to the medical room, where Yuyuer was lying in bed. A while later, Tang came out, and the professor asked how she was doing. Tang took off her mask and asked if Yuyuer was his granddaughter. The old man said not exactly, but he considered her as such. Tang made a hand gesture, and the old man asked if that meant the girl was okay. Tang said no, so the old man asked if it meant she had 3 years left. Tang corrected him, saying she had 3 months. She had seen many people with the same illness, and had no idea how the girl was still alive. Her body would not accept any treatment in this state, and the worst part was that there was not much they could do. Zhang asked if she was telling him to accept that the girl was going to die, but Tang said maybe we could use that. A while later, Yuyuer began to wake up. She overheard the old man outside, asking if they were really going to give her that medicine. Tang replied that it was not exactly that, but that she was thinking of using the material to create a new kind of medicine. She had noticed in some of her tests that the material seemed to emit an energy that could regenerate the surrounding cells. The old man said that's why some people who consumed went through that strange transformation. She asked what kind of an idiot would do that. The old man replied that he had seen 2 people who consumed and became extremely powerful. Tang was thoughtful for a moment and said that, aside from guaranteed death, she could not think of anything else it could cause. She then suggested they focus on the next topic, which was creating a medicine using the material to help the girl. Obviously, they did not have much time, but they also had to ensure she would not turn into a monster. Meanwhile, Zhao Heng finally placed the last item on the shelf. Looking at it, he wondered why she valued this stuff so much. At that moment, Tang appeared and thanked the big guy immediately. He asked if Yuyuer's illness could be cured. She responded that with the right idea. Maybe it was possible. He said he would go check on Yabai, but she said there was no need, since he seemed to be handling things just fine. As he was leaving, she asked about them searching for Yuyuer's father. He said they were looking, and she urged them to find him quickly, since it could help with her treatment. Back in the city, Yabai was on top of a building with a giant robot. The sun was blazing, and he had not found Yuyuer's father. He decided to fly around and search for any water, until he found a shopping mall and decided to go inside. He broke the glass and found himself in front of a pool. Obviously, even though there was water, it was not drinkable, but he heard a strange sound and started to approach. Suddenly, something strange rushed past him, and he quickly aimed with the robot, firing a laser out of nowhere. The creature burst out of the wall and lunged right at it. Man, the thing was huge. But luckily, his robot arms were huge too. He was confused by this new monster and readied his hand to fire, but the creature knocked him away. This time, Yabai slammed into the wall. He cursed the beast and fired again, but it dodged easily and came at him from the side. Yabai tried to punch, but the creature was too fast and dodged again. It managed to land a hit, but Yabai grabbed hold of it. He yanked the creature to the side and slammed it into the ground. Once again, he activated the laser and hit it right in the neck. The monster fell off, revealing a woman emerging from it. Man, now these creatures were shooting lasers too, and Yabai was shocked. Meanwhile, out on the street, the big guy was looking for Yabai. He could not find him until the drone activated. It was Yuyuer, asking if they were still outside. He told her to rest more and let them handle the search, but she said she could not sleep and felt better working with him. He told her that it was fine, but not to push herself too hard. With that, she reactivated the drone and continued searching. But soon she found something strange, and the big guy asked what it was. She explained that a strange group of zombies was heading toward the construction area. She wondered if there might be survivors there. That's when she saw a girl lying on top of a container. He saw through the camera and said he recognized her. Yuyuer asked him how he knew her. The big guy explained that she had been captured by that guy before, and she vanished from their sight. Yuyuer insisted they must save her. The behemoth instantly deployed the vehicle's massive claws, announcing his intent to tear through the undead horde. He carved them down as the girl watched, bewildered. Yuyuer told her to find an opening and leap aboard. Zhang relentlessly crushed everything before him. He neared the container, ordering the girl inside now. She vaulted into the rear as Yuyuer yelled it was time to move. The girl cautiously climbed further in, asking about their identities. The large man grinned, declaring they were the rescue squad. Meanwhile, in another sector, Yabai was, as always, taking a brutal thrash. Once more, he was hurled against the wall. The fiend moved in for the final, decisive blow, but Yabai shielded his face, knowing he dare not look. The only issue, his facial covering was damaged in the prior battle. It was now completely useless. The abomination ready to strike that barely missed him. He shot another laser, but the monster was too swift. Again, he was struck hard by its whipping tail. He plunged foolishly into the pool, realizing his carelessness. As he sank, the beast unleashed another deadly assault. The true problem was his body was now paralyzed. Vicious spikes began to impale the water surface. He wondered if this watery grave was his end. But then, a brilliant light erupted, striking the creature's eye. It was the big guy piloting his war machine. He announced the apocalyptic rescue team's grand arrival. The creature appeared completely baffled. It changed targets, attempting a swift retreat. But Yabai's colossal hand clamped down on its tail. He snarled, "And where do you think you're going?" He flung it back toward the pool, landing a devastating punch. He told the driver, "If that thing even glances at me, blast it with your laser." The big guy acknowledged the order. Before the creature could even react, Yabai fired a laser straight through its torso. The poor thing crumpled to the ground, convulsing. He seized its head, demanding to know why this mutant was here. He questioned if the organization had sent it to kill him. The girl only stared blankly. He warned her to speak, or he would crush her skull. At that moment, his mention of the secret order triggered her. Lena grew frantic, screaming she wouldn't return to that place. The big guy asked how this girl had also become a monster. In that instant, the monster recognized the girl in the car, calling out, "Lena, yabai," warned her to be still or he would execute her. Lena exited the car, asking if the creature was in. The beast beneath Yebai's grip kept calling her name. The big guy said to Uera that perhaps she was another victim transformed by the dark material. Lena moved closer, asking her sister what had been done to her. The girl revealed she had been subjected to experiments by some syndicate. She couldn't fathom the pain she felt. Yabai then commanded her to step away, stating he would end the monster's misery. But Lena pleaded with him not to kill her, despite the change. She was still her beloved sister. Uera blocked Yebai's path and asked him to wait. Yabai warned her to move, or he would destroy the drone. Uera begged him. They just reunited. He couldn't just take her life now. But the protagonist countered that a transformed person possessed an extremely volatile mind. Leaving her alive was far too great a risk. Even so, Lena stood her ground, weeping with her sister. Uera implored Yabai to at least let them speak, to observe what would unfold. But Yabai reminded her this thing had nearly ended him. There was no chance he would let it leave here alive. However, the big guy pointed out to Yabai, "You should thank Uera, because if not for her, he wouldn't have made it in time." With that, Yabai started to back away. He released the creature and turned away, calling them all a bunch of fools. The monster rose and asked if they were from the Shadow Organization. Uera said no, that they were merely crossing the city, searching for survivors. Annie then revealed that after her mutation, she was able to escape. However, the organization sent giant hounds to hunt her down. Uera questioned why she had assaulted Yabai then, to which she confessed that she was terrified and assumed he was one of their agents. She neared Lena, glad to see that she was safe. She had no desire to harm anyone present. Uera, relieved, proposed that Annie should join them. They were researching zombies nearby, and perhaps she could assist. Lena asked if they both could really become part of that. Uera said it would be their honor to help them. The single complication, of course, was that the massive beast wouldn't fit in the car. Annie told Lena that she would trail her wherever she went. The big guy asked Uera if she was certain about taking a monster like this to their shelter. She firmly replied they were just two sisters facing peril, and their rescue was a duty for everyone. Yabai simply boarded the vehicle and sat down. Seeing this, the big guy declared that since Yabai didn't object, it was time to return. So with the car, the drone, and the creature, they all departed. The big guy was amazed that the beast could keep pace with them. A while later, they arrived at the base. Expectedly, the doctor and Tang were stunned by the creature. Before them, they instantly demanded Yabai explain what was happening. Lena introduced herself, saying she was from the east. But when the catastrophe began, she and her sister took a car and fled south. From the monster's head, Annie emerged. Lena presented her, stating she was captured by a secret group and became one of their experiments. While the old man was petrified of this organization, Tang found her strangely cute and approached the beast, telling her there was nothing to fear. She just wanted to touch her for a moment. But the creature flared its fins, and Tang grew worried. The beast shifted aside and leaped into the pool. Tang wondered if the creature was suffering from anxiety. The big guy asked how the two of them had managed out there, since food was scarce, and they were all alone. Lena explained that for some time, a man had been their guide, helping them evade the undead, but he vanished suddenly, and they had been waiting since. The big guy inquired, who was this daring individual that helped you survive the hordes? She clarified that the man had given them garments, covered in zombie viscera, claiming it would hide their sin. That was the reason they had remained undiscovered. Instantly, the big guy began to suspect this might be Uera's father. Just then, Uera called out, asking if he had short hair, and was called Yeo Hyping. Lena confirmed it, recognizing Uera. That's when Uera revealed that Yeo Hyping was her own father, and then she collapsed right there. Tang caught her, asking why she had left the infirmary. The big guy looked at Yabai and asked why they weren't going back to find her father. But Yabai stated that once darkness falls, the world outside becomes far more treacherous, and he must. Just then, the old man interrupted and said it was time for Yabai to give them a real explanation, because he clearly seemed to know everything. He couldn't understand why Yabai held so many secrets. What was the harm in revealing the whole truth? The big guy agreed, adding if something happened to Yabai, none of them would be able to survive without his guidance. Yabai was silent a moment, then said it was indeed time to disclose everything to them. He informed everyone that he was a traveler from 50 years into the future. The big guy accepted it without question, stating that. Now it all made sense why Yebai was no ordinary person. The old man was floored by this sudden confession. He asked what kind of time travel Yebai was described. Tang was ecstatic, saying that humanity survived for over 50 years. Yebai explained it all began with that strange pearl, the object that initiated the world's ruin, but also ushered in the greatest leap in technology. While studying the substance, they learned that it was possible to transfer a person's consciousness into their past self. However, the version in the past had to be within the device's activation range. The old man was aghast, and Yebai clarified that this was how they managed to return to the virus's origin. Unfortunately, though, they could not travel any further back. He elaborated that after decades of study, they never found any similar materials on Earth. This led them to assume it originated from another world. The big guy immediately began to theorize that this could be an alien invasion. Yebai stated if that were the situation, the invaders had already claimed victory. In under 50 years, less than 10 million humans would remain alive, and even they had to battle relentlessly just to exist. In the final hour, Yebai was selected to journey to the past and rewrite destiny. The big guy now saw why Yebai was so obsessed with gathering the material from the very start and asked what Yebai's true age was. He answered that he was likely approaching 70 by then. However, each time he jumped back to the past, he arrived at the initial moment he met the plague. In school, the problem was even in the past, it was not simple to alter fate. The big guy was astonished, saying you could write an entire saga with that knowledge. Who could have known? Tang asked if they were fated allies in the future. Yebai said he was uncertain, but he hoped so. Confused, Zhao Hong asked why Yebai would say that, and if greater changes were coming. Our hero simply glanced at Tang, stating the virus was adapting. She must have already seen it. Tang agreed, saying their mere survival was a total miracle. That's because the zombie plague isn't passed by a body, but travels invisibly through the air. Immediately, the two of them shot up, stunned, asking how they had avoided transformation. Tang revealed that's why she says they are the chosen few. Some individuals possess certain antibodies that enable them to fight off the virus, but she could not promise that a bite wouldn't cause change. Yebai revealed that the real truth was they were all infected a very long time ago. In theory, they would all eventually become zombies too, even if they resisted the airborne contagion. That did not mean they couldn't be infected another way. Zhao Hong was impressed that Yebai had concealed all of this for so long. Yebai said he did so because he had just confirmed his deepest suspicions that someone from his own time was speeding up the virus's evolution. This faction was known as the Black Order. The scene cuts to Jubo. Turns out Jubo was a man. Until this moment, I thought he was a woman. He actually managed to revert to normal. I assumed the blonde man was deceiving him. Jubo grinned, stating he was now an official squad member. He was ecstatic, calling them all incredible. Meanwhile, a girl with white hair observed from a window. Back with Yebai, he clarified that in this timeline, people were turning into abominations much quicker than before. The first zombie evolution was supposed to be weeks away, but this time, it happened far earlier. On top of that, he had faced psychic beasts today, which were engineered by this very Black Order. He believed that this group had sent back agents from the future. The big guy then wondered why the Black Order possessed so much tech and intel, but showed no interest in preserving mankind. Yebai revealed that this faction believes that those with superpowers are a type of blessing from destiny. Their objective is to wipe out all of humanity, leaving only those with special abilities. Tang found this ideology confusing and stated it sounded exceptionally lame. The old man recalled something. He said that the black container Zhao Hang retrieved held some strange pills, and when he studied them, he found the same substance within them. It appeared to be a catalyst for something. He wondered if it was tied to the Black Order. Yebai stated they were likely tainting the water supply with a virus. That would explain why so many people were transformed. The big guy noted that your father's car was filled with those things, so maybe he was a member of the cult. Yebai said they would look into that later. But for right now, the crucial matter was that as long as the Black Order remains, humanity would have absolutely no chance to survive. He then displayed a map showing the upgrades he wanted for the base. To bolster their odds of withstanding an assault, he asked Tang to continue looking after Yue, who then questioned if Yebai was her brother somehow. Yebai asked if that presented an issue. She replied it was merely a medical inquiry. He said that it had no relation to that. and told the big guy to return and aid Tang and the old man. Prepare everything. Back inside the room, Yuera slowly regained consciousness. She rose to see Lena asleep beside her. She then departed the room and started down the hall. Inside one of the rooms, Tang was saying that Yebai did not seem to be fabricating his tale. She drank something and slumped onto the table, saying she'd hoped the troubles would finally cease. But they were only getting worse. Just then, Yuera materialized at her side. The doctor asked what Yuera was doing up and urged her to return to her bed. However, Yuera claimed she couldn't sleep and wished to go outside. Tang answered that everyone was resting, and Yebai would soon depart to find her father, so she didn't need to fret. Yuera then mentioned she heard her speaking and asked who else was with her. Tang replied that it seemed she had overheard correctly. She gestured to a head, saying, "It's him." Yuera, shocked, asked why she was conversing with a zombie. The head was from her foolish childhood friend. Yuera was utterly confused. So Tang explained he was a kind-hearted boy, and Yuera couldn't believe he had aspired to be a doctor. He was denied innumerable times, but studied until he finally achieved his goal. Ultimately, he was the only person who remained with her. When others at the hospital sought to steal her work, he stood forward and revealed the truth to everyone. When the apocalypse occurred, he was the one who shielded her with his own body. Even as he was being torn apart and transformed, he continued to protect her. In the chaos, so many pieces were scattered on the floor, she could not even tell which ones were his. Still, she gathered all the remains, hoping that with the aid of future technology, she could possibly bring him back to life. She then chuckled and said she was only jesting, knowing reality wasn't so simple. Yuera awkwardly asked if she had loved that person. Tang admitted that, strangely, he was the only one who had ever moved her heart. She then instructed Yuera to go back to her bed, because she needed to speak with Annie soon. Meanwhile, out by the pool, Yuera went to visit Annie. Annie rose from the depths, coming face to face with her. They regarded each other a moment before Yuera introduced herself, inquiring how Annie was feeling. Annie confessed she must always remain in hiding, because she could not risk being found by the organization. Yuera said that what they did to her body was monstrous, and asked if the process had hurt. Annie replied that recalling the past still made her shudder, but in the present, she no longer felt anything. Yuera grew pensive for a moment. Annie noted that she could see that Yuera also seemed to be in pain. She softly touched Yuera, who asked how she knew. As the monster was about to explain that humans are similar, she suddenly collapsed. Annie caught her with her fins, screaming for Tang. Tang rushed over in a panic, asking what Yuera was doing out there, when she had commanded her to return to her bed. Tang felt Yuera's head and said that at this pace, there would be no way to save her if she kept this up. But Yuera just apologized and said she had one favor. She wanted the doctor's help to finally perform the surgery. Meanwhile, Yebai was upgrading his mobile battle station. At the same time, in the city, Yuera's father was now looking for Annie and Lena. He had no idea where they had vanished to, and feared they had been ambushed by the undead. It was odd, as he had secured the location well. There shouldn't have been any monsters nearby, not to mention the giant tire marks on the ground. He couldn't guess what could have passed through here. Suddenly, wings beat the air, and when he looked up, a dragon was soaring through the sky. The creature circled the structure, and he felt a wave of relief. However, in that instant, a blue-bearded man appeared, saying he had finally found it. Back at the base, Yuera was inside a stasis pod. Outside, Yebai and the old man observed the procedure. John noted he was unsure about using that artifact to attempt to heal her, but Yebai stated they simply needed time for it to work. He had collected the correct amount of the pearl's energy, and if Tang adhered to the formula, everything would proceed without a hitch. Of course, some negative side effects might occur, but at least her life would be saved. The old man asked if they ran this many tests in the future to know all of this. Yebai replied that this specific cure was called the elixir of immortality. It was sold to the upper class. Back then, while it cured illnesses effectively, the concept of eternal life was a myth since it wore off. The old man said that with a title like that, it sounded far more believable. Yebai then stated this was the final safe option available. After this, they would have to use the entire material and see the result. The old man then said that everything was now clear. That's why Zhao Hang was currently out in the ruins, searching for her lost father. He warned Lena that the area was crawling with undead, and told her to scan the right flank. With that, she began to deploy her drone, but apologized as she was still learning how to use it. Trying to monitor all of the camera feeds was a challenge for her, as she considered herself a bit of a scatterbrain. That's what she always told herself. Zhao Hong told her to remain sharp, saying they would locate her father very soon. Just then, Lena reported she had spotted someone who resembled him on the street ahead of the drone. They saw a cloaked man running in desperation. He was escaping, this time a mob of rank 1 zombies. His special cloak was ineffective, so he tore it off and tossed it aside. Behind him, fixed to the cloak, was a live grenade. It detonated directly in front of the zombie horde. The problem was it had absolutely no effect. The zombies continued to walk through the fire until a laser beam sliced through it and 2 more. Immediately, Zhang Hong executed a drift, halting before the man, who looked startled. The big guy opened the door and asked if he was Yao Yueter's father. He seemed bewildered, but our bald friend told him to get in the car now. There was no time for an explanation, since he was just rescued, especially since the streets were no longer secure. With that, the vehicle sped off. However, the blue-bearded man was observing all of this. He asked the blonde man if he would really allow the target to escape so easily. The blonde said they were all part of a special unit, so they must remain careful and handle things with gravity. The blue-bearded man, however, stated that his own style was to simply show up and crush everything, instead of using such subtle tricks. But the blonde man reminded him that, regrettably, they had very few people remaining on their side. That was because of the girl, who commanded a zombie horde to attack their stronghold, but ended up getting everyone slaughtered. The blue-bearded man thought it strange that the girl, with her high-level power to control 1,000 undead, had been defeated by that base. The blonde man replied that it was a grave situation, as they could not resurrect any of the zombies they had lost. Meanwhile, the car was arriving at the... John appeared, concerned, and asked if it was really Appa. Yueter's father simply answered that it had been a very long time since they last met. He apologized for creating so many problems. However, Old John said they should praise the heavens that he was alive. He then told them to enter and take a bath, while they went to check on the girl. The next shot showed Opping looking horrified, seeing Yueter inside the medical capsule. He demanded to know what had happened to her. The grandfather explained that when Zhang Hong rescued the girl, she was okay, but her health had recently been declining, and what made things even worse was that she had pushed herself to her absolute limit in her quest to find her father. At that, Opping felt completely crushed, saying he should have come back much earlier. The old man told him to be calm, because there was much more to learn. First, he gave him a box, asking where he obtained it. Opping knew they had discovered it in his car. John then asked how he acquired it. He stated that he had met a man named Lero, from a faction called the Black Group, which at first seemed to be a charitable organization. He had been given these drugs, which were allegedly supposed to cure Yueter, but he never suspected the truth behind it. The old man asked if he was a member of this group and what the substances were for. Opping explained that these drugs caused several crises in the city, and when he learned the organization's true goals, he tried to leave. He stayed involved with the group, hoping he could one day escape and get back to Yueter. However, when he escaped and tried to return, he was cornered by a massive horde. But in the end, this tragic fate still befell her. He told himself that he always taught her to show love and compassion, yet he had been assisting the worst kind of people. He began to despair, saying he was a truly useless father. That's when Tang arrived and told him that Yueter was alive and still fighting. She then instructed him to provide some blood, since he was her biological father. Sadly, no one else that was a match to donate, so he represented their final hope. Immediately, Opping offered up his arm and told her to take as much blood as she required. The doctor cheered, saying it was lucky that he arrived. Otherwise, she would have used that material on the girl. The father looked confused and instantly yelled that he would never permit that to happen. The doctor was baffled as to the reason why, and John wanted to know what information she had. Opping explained that he was not certain why, but the organization was orchestrating a massive experiment. Their objective was the whole city of Ungshi, and countless lives would be extinguished. John said it made little difference, since most had already perished, so there weren't many people left to lose in the end. The father was adamant that they could not use the material on her, no matter what happened. John, however, contended that the only method to resist those villains was by utilizing the material, and besides, there was nowhere left to retreat. Opping, desperate, said they must abandon that place as fast as possible. He ran out, declaring he would take Yueter and flee, but then he was struck hard on his neck Yabai simply commanded him to be quiet. The poor man fell unconscious onto the ground. Yabai then turned and ordered them to draw the blood and begin the procedure. Meanwhile, in a different section of the city, one that was completely unharmed, something was taking place inside a tavern. There was Bluebeard, a long-haired man, asked how they all entered the secret order. Bluebeard says he joined only because his comrades had all died, so he was now completely alone. The blonde man beside him said that he must defend all the people he has left. The man at the bar said he understood. He remarked that if they became new allies, that would be truly wonderful. He just thought there would be more members in this so-called secret order. Bluebeard told him not to worry, that there were countless members, but they were out finding more recruits. Meanwhile, the blonde man stated he was intrigued about the society the superhumans would forge. They don't need to eat, can enter a battle mode, and do not even fear the undead. However, he sensed it would be difficult to unite everyone. Now, Bluebeard said he agreed with all of that, and for the moment, they would just await the consultant's directives. But the blonde man questioned if he truly thought it was wise to keep taking intelligence from someone from the future. Without pause, Bluebeard said it was their superior choice, since she knew everything that was fated to happen. He told the man, whose name was Yufeng, that he had learned from the consultant that this blonde man would grow to be very, very powerful in the future. However, Yufeng pointed out that if Yabai also hailed from the future, why did he not want to become a superhuman? Now that I've connected it, guys, this Yufeng is that blonde companion of the hero from the start, the one who became the monstrous albino beast. Bluebeard said that Yabai was not doing well and was merely a coward who envied the success of others. However, the blonde man said that the last time he saw him, he was utterly different from his memories. Bluebeard laughed, saying that at least those who betrayed Yabai in the future would likely face torment in this timeline. But one matter was definite. They would eventually have to kill Yabai, since he was obstructing their grand designs. Someone then applauded and said that he had spoken all he wished to hear. It was the blonde man wearing the hat who declared that the world Yabai wanted to build was completely opposed to theirs. For the moment, they were still attempting to sway the boy and change his heart. But if he refused to join them, they would, of course, have to eliminate him. Everyone in this chamber had been born from the black gold. They shed their former bodies and embraced a new existence. They had to delve even further into this item's secrets to attain a power this world had never witnessed. The men even had a special motto, proclaiming that the Shadow Squadron was eternal. These maniacs also had 30 different names. For heaven's sake, back at the base, the big guy was drowsy, and our hero was tuning the car. He asked Yabai about his companions from the future. Since they were younger in this era, they must be just children now. Yabai just said that both past and future had been altered, so whether his friends were even alive was unknown. Besides, in this new life, he might not ever find them again. The big guy then questioned how he planned to forge the organization he envisioned. Yabai said he didn't require specific comrades, but rather people who held the same ideals. Confused, Zhao Hong asked what that vision was. Yabai then revealed the goal was to purge the black gold and all the superpowered people and bring back the proper balance to humanity. The big guy said those were simple concepts to state, but incredibly difficult goals to accomplish. However, Yabai then described what became a future society, which grew reliant on the strange black gold. To fuel their special powers, they had to build zombie concentration camps, where humans would be turned to produce more materials. The issue was that in a system like this, the human population kept shrinking. Those with supernatural gifts refused to fight against. His own faction was the last of the resistance, who still dared to challenge that brutal regime. Zhao Hong then noted that, for someone who wanted to destroy black metal, Yabai laid out his creed to truly obliterate the threat. One must first comprehend its very nature. Once the last foe had been vanquished, every piece of technology born of it would also be dismantled. Zhao Hong could not help but express his awe at the sheer gravity of Yibai's powerful conviction. But Yabai warned against giving him too much praise, because without his allies from the future timeline, he would have surrendered to despair long ago. And if not for those who had saved his life, he would already be one of the walking dead. Sometime later, Opping awoke in an upstairs chamber. He remarked that the weather had grown quite strange lately. Zhang Hong said they should feel fortunate the downpour had subsided. However, Opping demanded to know if they truly would not flee this place. Zhang Hong noted that, according to Yibai's intel, the enemy faction had already spread across the entire globe. Therefore, attempting to escape would be a futile effort. The father then insisted that he knew Yuera would stay, because his gentle upbringing had made her far too naive. But Jahang countered that after all she had endured, she was more than capable of reaching her own conclusions and possessing her own independent will. She was far more resilient than he could fathom. Besides, it was she who had demanded the operation. Opping conceded the point, but couldn't quell his unease. Jahang then admitted that in the past, he also fretted endlessly over his own son, so much so that they argued, and his son left home, severing all communication with him. Tragically, it was only after his son vanished that he realized they had never truly reconciled. Opping asked if his son was still out there somewhere. Jahang confessed he was unsure. His fate remained a mystery, especially since he knew the boy would not want to face him. However, they must let go of the past for now, because it was their time to finally end this storm. Meanwhile, outside their stronghold, a colossal mech stomped onto the battlefield. Our hero had forged his own titan of war. The big guy was awestruck, declaring this the ultimate weapon. Opping simply stated that if the enemy truly wanted to find him, then he would make certain that their wish was granted. Because he disliked the idea of letting them run rampant, he extended his arm, Iron Man style, to the big guy, saying his mission was to defend the base in his absence. He told him not to worry, that any intruder who dared approach would be annihilated. Ibai told him to continue his watch over Yuera. As soon as the big guy confirmed, he ignited the thrusters and soared into the sky. The fool just stood there watching, muttering it was incredible. Meanwhile, in another part of the ravaged city, the blonde man was simply observing the scene unfold. The entire group was watching. They knew it was Ibai. It was unbelievable that he constructed a war machine like that so quickly. It seemed their consultant truly knew who the strongest players were, and it was time to initiate their grand plan. Bluebeard, thrilled, said he could barely restrain his own excitement. The blonde man then told him to start the festivities. Instantly, the man began his grotesque transformation. His hand turned crimson, something burst from his back, and then he became a monstrous, winged, horned beast. In that moment, he took flight. It spelled disaster if he was flying toward the base. Inside, Oppin was busy running some vital tests. Jiang spoke to Yuera's father over the comms, confirming that his biological compatibility was flawless. Oppin thanked him, saying that in the past, he would have needed to labor a lifetime to pay for this surgery. It appeared they would attempt a stem cell transfusion. Oppin said he didn't know how to ever thank them, but Jiang told him to keep his eyes on the monitors for enemy activity. Opping agreed and went back to his surveillance. Suddenly, a violet energy sphere rocketed in and detonated above them. Immediately, everyone felt the entire facility shudder. Of course, it was a mutated Bluebeard in the sky. He raised his hand again and fired a second volley. The base appeared to be shielded by an energy field, but even so, everything inside was shaking violently. John wondered if their stronghold was under direct assault. Opping reported there was nothing on the ground cameras, and the other surveillance feeds were now offline. Meanwhile, the big guy had already sprinted to the vehicle and warned that there was a massive, winged beast launching fireballs from the sky. Considering the surprise element, it was certainly a creature from that shadowy organization. Zhang Hong immediately demanded they raise the blast doors so he could go out there and handle this threat. Zhang complied, but warned him to be extremely careful. The gate lifted, and he roared out from the rooftop. The new missile pods our hero installed began to fire instantly. The big guy roared. The enemy would pay dearly for daring to attack their home. The laser fired, and Bluebeard was taken by surprise, but the villain managed a narrow dodge. But the next barrage was already on its way. Meanwhile, Yabai was flying far from there. However, he found it suspicious that his communicators had gone silent. He wondered if he was now entering the territory, controlled by those mysterious enemies. It was best to be ready to unleash his full power here. But then he sensed something. He swerved sharply and evaded another powerful strike. There were multiple mechs on the ground below, also constructed from the black metal. He recognized them immediately as creations of the Black Guild. So now he was positive that someone had come from his future. He fired a laser, but the machine deflected it. Yabai was impressed that they possessed this level of technology. However, he flew up and crushed the creature's head. He punched another one of the robots, and the Titan-on-Titan battle was now in full fury. He evaded yet another attack, drew a claw, and impaled another one through the chest. But as soon as the first machine fell, He looked up to see 5 more descending upon him. He began to question why there were so many. He wondered how long these people had been back in this era. Once again, he unleashed a volley of missiles that scored direct hits, for erupted in flames, and he vaporized another with a laser. Meanwhile, back at the base, the big guy was trying to hit Bluebeard, who simply evaded. The long-haired man asked if they would finally breach the base. Loro confirmed, but said the man was afraid, because of the electrified fencing and the poison gas. Loro said they would make their entrance, but not yet, as they would be too easily eliminated. However, this was all anticipated, which is why he had other plans. At that moment, Oppen warned everyone inside the base that the big guy appeared to have driven off the winged monster. He asked if he was all right and about the surgery's progress, but then something appeared at his neck. A torrent of blood erupted, and he collapsed to the floor. Immediately, the blond man materialized from his corpse. He remarked that this blood mark was perfect for him to inhabit, even better, as it seemed he was in the command center. Meanwhile, on the outside, Xiao Hung was having the time of his life. He fired another salvo of missiles straight at Bluebeard. The creature tried to escape by taking to the air, but realized it couldn't and turned to cast a defensive spell. It managed to detonate a few of the projectiles, but a laser beam struck its hand directly. The sky lit up and it fell to the earth like garbage. The big guy was thrilled, yelling that the vehicle's combos were insane. Slowly, he advanced on the massive beast, which began to conjure another fireball, slamming it down, unleashing a shockwave that sent the tank flipping over. The vehicle began to tumble. Bluebeard declared that this was where the fight would end. He leaped toward him and with both feet grabbed the tank side. He then drew closer, saying it was time to crack open that can. However, the big guy, completely unfazed, swung the door open straight in his face. He drew his sidearm and took aim to fire. The monster tried to evade, but was still struck squarely in the shoulder, causing him to reel backward in pain. If you thought the big guy would stay put in the car, you were wrong. He slid out and faced down the beast. At that moment, Bluebeard said he now understood why he was sent to this location. The big guy asked what he was talking about and why. He seemed to be laughing. The monster kept chuckling and called out John's name and said it had been a very long time since they had met. He then began to revert to his human form and asked if John didn't recognize him at all. That's when John recognized him as his old friend, Xiao. Meanwhile, back inside the base, Tang was standing guard over Yuer. She seemed relieved that no debris had struck the capsule. Zhang informed them the attack likely severed the main power. Now, they were operating solely on emergency generators. However, the greater issue was that the stem cells they had taken from her father had been completely ruined. Tang said it was no issue. They could simply ask him for more. But just then, the blond man entered, stating that unfortunately, he would not be able to return to this facility. Zhang whirled around and demanded to know who this man was. The blond man introduced himself as part of the organization and offered his apologies for what occurred. Shocked, the old man couldn't believe if these intruders had managed, or if they had somehow defeated Johan. The blond man said he was not so violent and had merely borrowed a tiny piece of Mr. Yeo's flesh. Young asked if he meant that he had murdered Haping. The blond man replied that to humans, he was indeed dead, but now he had been reborn as a zombie, which was an even greater existence. He then told Dr. Tang not to be afraid, as they had no intention of harming her. But Zhang ordered him out, yelling no one that would aid him. The blond man then said it appears Yabai had revealed everything, but perhaps they shouldn't believe him so readily. After all, from what he had been told, this Yabai was the kind of person who abandons his allies. He needs to save his own skin. Meanwhile, our hero was smashing the giant mechs to pieces. He glanced aside and saw 2 more closing in on it. A girl was observing him. This girl was undoubtedly one of the others who had also traveled from the future. Our hero obliterated another robot, and some others began to open fire on him. He defended himself with ease. He spun around and annihilated the other 2. They were slowly being reduced to dust. But he found it strange that these machines were so weak, as if they were nothing more than simple construction models. Then a massive gate began to descend. Inside, there was another challenger. 2 pale, white legs emerged, and some kind of flamingo, peacock-lion hybrid abomination appeared before him. He noted that at least when it came to flair, this faction truly never failed to impress. The creature unleashed a piercing shriek and immediately charged at him with a furious roar. Yabai managed to dodge, but she initiated something in her stance and launched an immediate follow-up strike. that sent him flying backward once again. The monster continued her assault while he desperately evaded. Then she activated something in her eye and focused on him. There was some kind of slowing aura, and he didn't even have to look directly at her. While he was immobilized, she unleashed a wave of violet flames. Tragically, he could not move in time, and our hero was engulfed. Back at the base, Zhao Hong demanded to know why that man was alive. But Bluebeard said it was the same question. He wanted to ask of Zhao Hong. He insisted, demanding to know what happened and why he joined this group. He asked if he was the one who had betrayed them and led to the deaths of Shao Qi and Ah Koen. Bluebeard admitted he was there, but he had done nothing intentionally. The big guy then roared, asking why he had betrayed them all when they had trusted him like their own brother. Bluebeard replied that their crusade of stealing from the rich to give to the poor was always destined for failure. On what should have been their final heist, they were ambushed by the authorities. However, thanks to the new organization, he was rescued in time and saved his friends, who were gravely wounded while Zhao Hang had vanished. The big guy asked if he had truly saved Kun and Shao Qi and if they were still alive. Hesitantly, Bluebeard said yes. Everyone was safe, and they should all reunite as before. But the big guy bellowed, asking what kind of sick joke this was. He already knew the organization's goal was to annihilate humanity and forge a new world only for the transform. Now he was certain that not only had Bluebeard mutated, but he had probably done the exact same to their two old friends. Bluebeard countered that their past life was now over. They couldn't go on living like that forever. They had no names and were hunted by the entire world. But now, within this new organization, they were superhumans who could reshape humanity itself. Just then, his tail was brutally severed. The big guy hesitated but still sliced off a piece of him. Once more, he demanded that Bluebeard tell him if Kun and Shao Qi were safe. Bluebeard's entire demeanor shifted. He said that the big guy was just as irritating as ever. He flew away and warned that if the big guy refused to talk, he would personally take him to meet them. Back at the base, the old man told the blonde man that Ibai was strange, but he was sure that the boy tried harder than anyone to protect. Where? Stong mused for a moment and asked, how would they go to spin this? Then, why was a young girl sealed in a capsule for superhumans? He then said he understood that Yebai wanted to create psychics who would follow his every single order, and it seemed Yebai was concealing his mechanic identity. Very well. He then went to the console and stated that these so-called apocalypse mechanics were zealots for the black gold. They were masters of experiments on human bodies. Zhang asked what he was attempting to do. Stong simply answered that he was helping the boy complete his goal, but with one tiny alteration. They would make this girl into a psychic loyal to the black faction. He pressed enter and declared that now, with one more ability user, the organization had grown even stronger. The old man cursed him as human filth and charged him with an iron pipe in his hands. But suddenly, fire erupted and melted the pipe. Jiabo was standing next to the blonde man. He warned him to be cautious and not to play with flames in here. The long-haired man replied that he was excited to meet the new company. Not to mention, he felt a special bond with her. The blonde man then ordered him to shut down all defensive systems. In that place, he said he was on it. However, he started yelling in pure frustration, saying he was angry because there was nothing to ignite here. He then noticed Lena collapsed on the floor. He asked if he could incinerate her, since no one said they had to take her alive. The blonde man gave his permission, and immediately he moved toward her. He told her to scream loudly when she began to burn. He then seized her arm, but the entire room began to quake. The ceiling began to collapse, and the transformed and appeared. The old man was shocked, and she unleashed her eye power. In the next instant, she had already defeated everyone in the room. The bodies all collapsed to the floor. John thanked her and told her to deal with these villains. In the lab, Tang frantically worked at the console to reverse the changes Song made, but was not having any success at that moment and unleashed her power once more. This time, aimed at Yue. Tang was amazed and asked how that power seemed to be suppressing the black metal strength. Since that was the situation, she asked, and to keep doing it to slow the girl's mutation. She recalled that Yebai had told her to use the backup protocol in the case of an emergency. But then from nowhere, a blue energy slash struck, and from behind. It was the damned Yufeng who said. It seemed he had located the person the organization was seeking. He sent another slash, but this time and evaded it. She opened her massive jaws and fired a water blast at it, but he dodged to the side. However, the exchange of powerful attacks caused all of Tang's pieces to scatter across the floor. Back at the enemy's stronghold, the creature had just lit Yabai ablaze, but he defended himself with an energy shield, saying he was wasting too much power in this place. It was time to end this in one swift blow. He produced the flamethrower from his hand and aimed it at her. The creature was set on fire and tried to use her eye ability, but he evaded it. He fired 2 missiles that struck beside her foot, and by the time she saw him, he was already approaching from the side. He severed one of her legs with a massive chainsaw. The creature collapsed, and he immediately shattered her main eye. High above, the white-haired girl was simply observing. She commented that he had passed with exceptional marks. Our hero stood before the inferno, with the creature being consumed by the roaring flames. But suddenly, he looked behind him and fired a laser aimed at the girl. The top of the stronghold exploded. He looked up, but did not see her. But she was soon standing beside him, saying he truly earned the title of Master Mechanic. Once more, he tried to strike her, but the damned girl teleported away. She appeared on the other side, saying it was a pity he had not joined the mechanics committee. Angry, Ibai wondered why he always encountered people with teleportation abilities. He flew toward her, but the girl just held out her hand. At that moment, his machine seemed to stop working. He wondered what was going on and why. It seemed like his energy was being drained. He then asked if she was a traitor to the committee, and from what era she had come from. She said that once she had been the great sage of the northern mountain. She served the mechanical council that you should know well. She lowered her hand, and Yebai's titan crashed to the ground. He wondered why everything felt so immensely heavy. She then revealed that this black gold manipulation technique came from 100 years in the future, so he should give up his resistance. The only path he had left was to join their organization. Ibai seemed to know the name of the great sage of the north. He said that everyone assumed that she had died, since she vanished without a trace. But it seemed she had become a lapdog for the black organization. He said that by doing this, she was a complete and utter disgrace to her grandfather. This girl was Dr. Zhang's granddaughter. Her name was Zhang Yu. Could she be the future version of Yue? Now I am completely baffled about what is happening here. We're trying to understand, but she said that joining the Shadow faction was the most logical course of action, and everything she did was to advance the evolution of what her grandfather had begun. Asked if her goal to turn all humans into monsters was this so-called grand plan, and that she must have surely murdered many of her mechanic allies in the timeline she lived in. Yue said she always spoke the truth, but very few would believe her, and to prevent future issues, she had no other option but to eliminate every last one of them. She lamented that if Ibai continued to stand against her, his own fate would be the same. Our hero said he was eager to hear what brilliant scheme she had. She then asked if he truly thought that the black metal was the only threat in this apocalypse. He said that from what he understood, the meteor delivered this virus, which caused humans to mutate. She said that for a long time, she believed that as well. However, the truth was something no one dared to speak, for fear of creating mass hysteria. Ibai then asked what great revelation had made her switch sides and began to slaughter so many people. Yue simply said it was because of a meteor. 5 months ago, it crashed on this planet, bringing the zombie plague. But in 100 years, another meteor exactly like it will arrive. Only this one will be 10,000 times larger than the first. She clarified that the first meteor was only here to collect data about the world, and the second one would be the true invasion. Even with all the weapons combined on the planet, it was impossible to stop a meteor of that magnitude, especially one that was radioactive. And considering that in her future, the endless wars had left them with no aerial defenses, they were completely helpless. As a final resort, the committee had a new idea and started to build ships to escape the planet. But by some miracle, she had found the same time machine that Ibai had used, even though this one's limit seemed to be the consciousness of 2 individuals. It was more than enough. Angrily, he asked if everyone was doomed to die. Why was she trying to turn them into zombies? Yue explained that from the moment the first meteor struck, it was unavoidable that everyone would eventually mutate into creatures. She had only sped up the process by spreading the black gold. To save mankind, they had to unite all superpowered people and avert the disaster that was rapidly approaching. Meanwhile, back at the base, Eng was battling Yufeng. John was trapped under debris when an unconscious Dr. Tang appeared. Suddenly, Song began to materialize, saying that was a close call. He said risking it all like that was utter foolishness, and asked if everyone was unharmed. He began to pull John free, and said it was a good thing to see he was still breathing. Then he stated that he must take him alive, as that was one of his granddaughter's special requests. The old man was bewildered, not even knowing she was still alive. The blonde man said she was a truly remarkable person who had become the great sage of the mechanics, a full century into the future. Along with their grand organization, they had already taken control of the entire planet. Confused, the old man asked if he was speaking about Zhang Yu, and if she had truly become a member. Man, I was shocked. Apparently, they're different people. Right, guys? The blonde man said she was the great sage guiding the organization, and might have gone further if she still had her legs. I don't know if this translation is incorrect, but the blonde man said, one of old Zhang's experiments caused a past explosion that cost her both of her legs. Apparently, Mr. Zhang's son had sent her out of the country. However, she never bore a grudge against the old man, and that fact moved Song to his very core. He then said he was sure Zhang must feel immense guilt, so it would be good for him to finally meet her. After all, he assumed that's why Zhang wanted to care so well for Yue, since the two of them looked so much alike. He then kicked Jubo's head, telling him to get up already. He ordered him to take the old man and Dr. Tang, saying they were returning to their main base. But then someone else entered the chamber. They looked bewildered. It was Yue's father, who had been transformed. The blonde man quickly told Jubo to finish them all off and take him away. But Jubo was on the floor, completely petrified. Zhang's friend had risen, covered in muck, and was advancing on Jubo. He tried to unleash his flames, but the creature was immune. Zhang awoke and saw Xiaoxing shielding her. Once more, the blonde man kicked Yue's father, saying that it's such a pivotal moment. Things could not go astray. The old man cried out for it. But at that very moment, Yue's capsule began to radiate light. Meanwhile, Lena was watching and battered and beaten outside, and Yufeng was mocking her, telling her to surrender, because she could not match him when it came to speed. Even poor Jiang was knocked completely unconscious. Bluebeard said he had gone easy on him, but it would be better if he became a superhuman now, because he'd be immensely stronger. But then, energy flared up behind his back, from the center of the base. A green beam of light shot straight into the sky. Back in Ibai's battle, he told Yue to stop with the excuses. This plan of risking all humanity over a meteor was illogical, but she explained that the second meteor follows the signal broadcast by the first one, and that is why it was fated. That would eventually strike the Earth. They had absolutely no way to escape, and everyone would have to become extraordinary to survive. Confused, Yabai asked what her master plan was then. Was it to amass a great deal of black gold, or to create a legion of superhumans? She said she wanted to completely control and lead them all, like a queen, just as she assumed Ibai also wanted to be. He said it was a very tempting proposition, but he rejected it. That's because he had no desire to be the leader of a cult, filled with members who were on the verge of exploding. He raised his shield and declared that, as a member of the Mechanics Association, he would never align with those who stand against humanity. He fired a laser beam in her direction, which she blocked effortlessly with just her hand. He launched even more torpedoes, which detonated, but she simply teleported away. She remarked that it was impressive how fast he had created the technology to regenerate energy so quickly. But without the black gold, it was only a matter of time before he ran out of energy. Her power once again forced Ibai's colossal mech downward. He ignited the thrusters on his back, trying to break free, but she merely extended her hand and slashed right at him. The boy kept flying, firing more missiles, but she protected herself within the smoke. He charged in and unleashed a powerful shockwave, but this time it had no effect. Still, he celebrated, because at least now she couldn't teleport. But Yuri called it ridiculous to think she could be stopped by that kind of attack. After all, his system would overload long before that occurred. Yabai persisted, saying if he could drag her to the next life, that would be victory enough. But Yue asked if his priority wasn't self-preservation. He kept fighting, saying he would never be a puppet for others. Yue then questioned why he had joined the Mechanics Committee. He answered that, at least, the committee could see the difference between the horrors of humanity. They had faith in continuing the search for a way to save the people of this world. But she pointed out that up to now, all he had accomplished was getting revenge on Ruoxi. The protagonist said that was perfectly fine, because he had 100 years to come up with something better. She kept insisting, saying he should recall humanity's boundless greed. But then a voice said, "It is prepared." Both of them were completely startled, and Yue appeared, flying on butterfly wings in the sky. Yabai instantly knew it was her. He asked why she had become an extraordinary being. Yuera said it was ironic for him to speak of resisting powers when he himself had created such a creature. However, Yuera brought her hands together, and violet energy began to drain from the other girl. The power was flowing straight toward her. And Ibai wondered why the black gold seemed to be vanishing. She fell to the earth, questioning how this could be possible. Meanwhile, Yabai was trying to comprehend how she was capable of absorbing the black gold. Yuera explained that she could completely drain the energy from any zombie, and that she could finally help everyone. Startled, he pointed out that she did not look well. The young girl calmly acknowledged. She knew her body would not hold out for much longer. This fate was always going to happen, with or without this transformation. Yuera then revealed that she had witnessed Ibai in the future. Confused, he asked if she could now read people's minds, but she only smiled and explained she could perceive the truth. Yuera had traveled to the past to save them all. She believed everything could be resolved if people were given the support and hope they required. That was what her father had always instilled in her, and it was what she held onto with all of her being. She was positive unity was the only key to surviving the coming trials. That is why she decided she would absorb all the black gold on Earth, leave this solar system, and divert the meteor to another galaxy. Finally, Yuera told